I arrived at my daughter's wedding ready to walk her down the aisle, but instead I found my face plastered on a security poster with the words, "Do not admit." My own child had banned me from the happiest day of her life because my work boots embarrassed her new in-laws. I did not scream, and I did not beg. I just turned around and made one phone call. 3 hours later, the lights went out. The music stopped, and she realized her perfect wedding was not paid for by a trust fund. It was paid for by the man she just kicked out. My name is Lucian Graves, and I am 71 years old. The engine of my 1998 Ford F-150 sputtered and coughed as I turned onto the long, winding driveway of the Sterling estate. The truck had been with me through 3 recessions, 2 floods, and the death of my wife, Beatrice. It rattled with the familiar comfort of an old friend, but today that rattle sounded like a gunshot in a library. Ahead of me, a line of Bentleys, Porsches, and Mercedes stretched toward the iron gates. Their paint jobs gleamed under the July sun, reflecting a world I was not supposed to be part of. I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of myself. The tuxedo I wore was 20 years old. It smelled faintly of cedar and mothballs. I had brushed it down carefully this morning, making sure every piece of lint was gone. My tie was a simple black bow tie that Beatrice had taught me how to tie decades ago. I looked like what I was. A man who worked with his hands trying to look respectable for a day that did not belong to him. The valet parking attendants were young men in crisp white uniforms. As I inched my truck forward, I saw their eyes dart toward me. They exchanged looks, smirks. They were wondering why a gardener or a delivery man was trying to crash the line for the wedding of the year. I did not blame them. To the world, I was just Lucian, the retired mechanic who lived in a small wooden house on the edge of town. I kept my hands on the steering wheel. My knuckles were swollen from arthritis and scarred from years of turning wrenches and hauling crates. These were the hands that had paid for the violin lessons, the private schools, and the university degrees that brought us to this very driveway. I reached the front of the line. The gate was an imposing structure of wrought iron and gold leaf meant to keep the unwanted out and the chosen in. A security guard stepped out of the booth. He was a large man with a buzz cut and sunglasses that hid his eyes. He did not wave me forward. He held up a hand, palm out. I rolled down the window. The air conditioning in my truck had broken 6 years ago, and the heat of the afternoon immediately invaded the cab. "Good afternoon, sir," the guard said. His voice was flat. "Deliveries are around the back." "I am not a delivery driver," I said. My voice was deep and steady gravel over concrete. "I am the father of the bride, Lucian Graves." The guard paused. He did not check his clipboard. He did not look for my name on the list. Instead, he took a half step back and looked at the gate itself. Following his gaze, I saw it. Taped to the stone pillar right at eye level was a laminated sheet of paper. It was not an official notice from the venue. It was something homemade, something personal. There was a photograph in the center of the page. It was a picture taken of me 3 weeks ago. I was under the hood of my neighbor's car helping him fix a transmission. My face was smeared with grease. I was wearing my faded blue coveralls with the patch on the shoulder. My hair was messy. Below the unflattering photo, printed in bold red letters, were the words, "Do not admit." Underneath that, in smaller black text, it read, "This individual is not on the guest list and is strictly prohibited from entering the premises. Security is authorized to use force if necessary." The world stopped spinning for a second. The hum of the expensive engines behind me faded into silence. I stared at the picture. Nia must have taken that photo herself. She had come by that afternoon to ask for money for the floral arrangements. She had smiled at me while I wiped the oil from my hands and wrote her a check. She had snapped that picture while I was signing my name. She had captured me at my most vulnerable, not to cherish the memory, but to use it as a weapon. I looked back at the guard. He was shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his hand resting casually near his belt. "You see the sign, sir," he said. His tone was not apologetic. It was the tone of a man who enjoyed enforcing rules against people he deemed inferior. Ms. Nia Harrington gave us strict instructions. No exceptions. Harrington. She was already using her husband's last name. She had erased Graves before the vows were even spoken. "There must be a mistake," I said, though I knew there was no mistake. "I spoke to her last night. She asked me to come early. She wanted me to walk her down the aisle." The guard let out a short, sharp laugh. "Look, pal, I don't know what fantasy world you are living in, but the bride was very clear. She said her father might try to show up and cause a scene. She said you might claim you paid for things or that you have a right to be here. She told us you are confused. Confused. The word hung in the hot air between us. Behind me, a horn honked. Someone in a convertible was getting impatient. They wanted the old truck with the old man to move so they could get to the champagne and the caviar. I looked at the guard again. I looked at the sign. I looked at the grease on my face in the photo. It was a caricature of poverty. Nia did not just want to keep me out. She wanted to make sure everyone knew I was beneath them. She wanted her new family, the wealthy Harringtons, to see that she had severed the limb that connected her to the working class. She was protecting her image by destroying my dignity. The memory of the phone call from the night before played in my mind. Her voice had been sweet, sugary. "Daddy, please make sure you wear the tuxedo. I want everything to be perfect. You know how nervous Brent's parents make me. I need you there to hold my hand." It was a lie, a calculated, cold-blooded lie designed to get me here to the gate so I could be turned away. She wanted the satisfaction of knowing I came and was rejected. It was a power play. "Sir, you need to turn the vehicle around," the guard said, stepping closer. "Do not make me call the police. You are blocking traffic." I looked past the gate up the winding drive toward the mansion. I could see the white tent set up on the lawn. I could see the flowers. Thousands of white roses. Beatrice's favorite. I had signed the check for those roses. I had signed the check for the tent. I had signed the check for the security guard who was currently threatening me. For a moment, a flash of rage ignited in my chest. It would be so easy. I could step out of the truck. I could tell this guard that I owned the company that insured this property. I could tell him that the tuxedo I was wearing cost more than his monthly salary, even if it was old. I could demand to see the manager. I could cause the scene Nia was so afraid of. But then I looked at the laminated sign again. Do not admit. If this was how she wanted to start her new life, I would not stand in her way. I would not be the angry old man screaming at the gate. I would not give her the satisfaction of a story she could tell her friends about her crazy father ruining her day. I took a deep breath. The air tasted of exhaust fumes and cut grass. "Understood," I said to the guard. He looked surprised. He had expected a fight. He had his shoulders tensed, ready for a confrontation. My compliance threw him off balance. I put the truck in reverse. I carefully maneuvered around the sleek silver convertible behind me. The driver, a young man with slicked back hair, shook his head in disgust as I passed. I drove slowly back down the long driveway. I did not speed. I did not look back. I drove with the steady precision of a man who has driven 18-wheelers through blizzards and hurricanes. When I reached the main road, I pulled over onto the shoulder. I turned off the engine. The silence of the cabin settled around me. I took off the black bow tie and placed it on the passenger seat. I unbuttoned the top button of my shirt. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a burner phone. It was a simple flip phone, the kind I used for business dealings that required absolute discretion. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang once. "Yes, sir," the voice on the other end answered immediately. It was Dante, my lawyer, my right hand, and the only man who knew exactly how many zeros were in my bank account. "Dante," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I am at the gate," Dante said. "I am 2 cars behind the silver convertible. I saw what happened. Do you want me to go in and fix this?" "No," I said. "Do not go in. Turn around." There was a pause on the line. "Sir, Nia has made her choice," I said. "She has decided that Lucian Graves, the mechanic, is not welcome. She has decided that she is a Harrington now." I watched a bird fly across the sky. It was a hawk circling, looking for prey. "Execute the absence clause," I said. Dante inhaled sharply. "Sir, the absence clause voids the contracts immediately. It triggers the immediate repayment clauses. It pulls the funding for everything. The wedding, the house, the accounts, everything. It is the nuclear option." "I know what it is, Dante," I said. "I wrote it." But Sir Dante pressed his voice low. "It is her wedding day. The guests are inside. The food is served. If we do this now, it will be a massacre, a social massacre." I looked at the bow tie on the seat next to me. I thought about Beatrice and how she would have felt seeing that sign on the gate. Beatrice, who worked double shifts so Nia could have piano lessons. Beatrice, who died waiting for Nia to come visit her in the hospital while Nia was too busy at a sorority party to answer the phone. "She put my picture on the gate, Dante," I said softly. She mocked the grease on my hands. The same grease that paid for that dress she is wearing. I understand, Sir Dante said. His tone shifted. It became professional. Cold. Do it, I commanded. Do it now. I hung up the phone. I started the truck. The engine roared to life. I merged back onto the road, heading away from the Sterling estate. I was going home to my small wooden house. I was going to make a sandwich. I was going to sit in my recliner, and I was going to wait. Because the thing about money is that it is invisible until it is gone. Nia thought the money came from a bottomless well left by her mother. She thought she was independent. She thought she was safe. She was about to find out that the well had a tap, and I had just turned it off. I drove toward the horizon as the sun began to dip lower. Behind me, the party was just getting started. Inside the mansion, champagne corks were popping. Brent was probably making a toast about his success. Nia was probably laughing, adjusting her veil, feeling relieved that the old man was gone. They had 3 hours. 3 hours before the checks bounced. 3 hours before the system updated. 3 hours before the reality of their lives crashed into the fantasy they had built. I turned on the radio. It was playing a blues song. I hummed along. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It was the feeling of a burden being lifted. The burden of an ungrateful child. I had carried her for 28 years. Today I put her down. The real wedding gift was not the check I had written. The real gift was the lesson I was about to teach her. A lesson about gravity. What goes up must come down. And when you cut the strings that hold you up, you fall very fast and very hard. I tapped the steering wheel. Happy wedding day, Nia, I whispered to the empty cab. I hope it was worth it. I parked my truck in the gravel driveway of my small wooden cabin and cut the engine. The silence of the woods usually brought me peace, but today it felt heavy. I pulled my smartphone from my jacket pocket. It was a modern device that contrasted sharply with my worn work clothes and the peeling paint of my home. I opened the security app linked to the cameras I had insisted on installing at the Sterling estate for the event. I had told Nia it was for insurance purposes since I was the one insuring the venue through one of my shell companies. She had rolled her eyes and called me paranoid, but she had allowed it. Now those cameras were my window into a world I had been forcibly ejected from. On the small screen, the wedding was in full swing. The reception hall was a masterpiece of crystal and silk. Waiters in white gloves moved like ghosts through the crowd, offering trays of hors d'oeuvres that cost more than my weekly grocery bill. In the center of it all was Nia. My daughter looked breathtaking in her lace gown, holding a glass of champagne and laughing at something Brent was whispering in her ear. She did not look like a woman who missed her father. She did not look like a bride distressed by the empty seat in the front row. She looked relieved. She looked like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I zoomed in on the feed. Nia was standing next to Mrs. Harrington Brent's mother. The woman was draped in pearls and wearing a dress that screamed old money, even though I knew their bank accounts were currently echoing with emptiness. Mrs. Harrington leaned in close to Nia, touching her arm with a feigned intimacy. Through the high-definition audio feed, I could hear every word as if I were standing right next to them. "It is such a relief, darling," Mrs. Harrington said, her voice dripping with condensation. "I was so worried your father would show up in those dreadful overalls and ruin the aesthetic. It is good he knew his place. He realized he simply does not belong in our world." I waited for Nia to defend me. I waited for my daughter to say that her father was a hard-working man who had sacrificed everything for her. I waited for her to say that without my grease-stained hands, she would not be standing in that ballroom. Instead, Nia smiled. She took a sip of her champagne and nodded. "You are right, Evelyn. I was terrified he would try to make a speech or do something embarrassing. He just doesn't understand how things work at this level. I am just glad he is gone so we can focus on the people who actually matter. The people who actually matter." The phrase hit me harder than the sign on the gate. To Nia, I was not a person. I was a resource. I was an ATM that needed to be hidden in the back room when company came over. She looked around the room, her eyes shining with pride. She believed she had finally ascended. She thought she was a Harrington, now safe in the fortress of the upper class, protected from the stain of her working-class roots. She had no idea that the floor she was dancing on was made of paper, and I was holding the match. I turned off the phone. I could not watch anymore. My hands were shaking not from age, but from a rage so cold it burned. I walked into my cabin. It was a simple place. A single bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room filled with books. To the outside world, this was all I had. This was the home of Lucian the mechanic. I walked to the closet in the hallway and pushed aside a stack of old blankets. Behind them was a wall safe. I spun the dial right, left, right. The heavy steel door clicked open. Inside were not piles of cash or gold bars. Inside were papers, documents, the paper trail of a life lived in the shadows to protect the light of my daughter's future. I pulled out a thick leather binder. It smelled of old paper and secrets. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened it. The first page was a death certificate. Beatrice Graves, my wife, Nia's mother. Nia worshipped the memory of her mother. To her, Beatrice was a saint, a woman of elegance and taste who had died too young, leaving behind a tragic husband who could not keep up with her legacy. Nia believed that the money for her education, her car, her apartment, and this wedding came from a trust fund Beatrice had set up before she passed, the Beatrice Future Fund. I turned the page. Underneath the death certificate were the real financial records from the year Beatrice died. They were a disaster. Credit card statements with balances in the tens of thousands, notices of foreclosure, gambling debts from underground casinos in Atlantic City. Beatrice had not been a saint. She had been an addict. She had loved the thrill of spending money she did not have. She had almost bankrupted us 3 times. I remembered the nights I spent working triple shifts, driving trucks across state lines, sleeping in rest stops just to pay off her bookies and keep the lights on. I remembered coming home to find Beatrice crying, surrounded by shopping bags filled with things we did not need while collectors banged on the front door. When she died, she left us with nothing but debt. Negative $200,000. That was her legacy. But I could not let Nia know that. Nia was only 12. She needed a hero. She needed a mother she could look up to. So I created a lie. I worked. I built my logistics company from 1 truck to a fleet of 500. I invested in real estate when the market was down. I made millions in silence. And I took a portion of that money and funneled it into a fake trust fund. I named it after Beatrice. I looked at the bank transfer receipt in the binder. $200,000. Transferred 3 months ago from my holding company to the wedding planner's account. The memo line read, Beatrice Future Fund Distribution. Nia thought she was spending her mother's money. She thought she was independent of me. She used my own money to buy a dress to impress people who hated me. She used my own money to hire security guards to keep me out. She used my money to construct a fantasy where she was a princess and I was the frog. She had called me last week screaming because I hadn't released the funds fast enough. You are just the executor, Dad, she had yelled. It is Mom's money, not yours. You have no right to hold it back. Stop being jealous that she actually left something for me. I had released the funds. I had let her believe the lie because I thought it was the last kindness I could offer her. I thought that on her wedding day she might look at me with gratitude. I thought she might realize that I was the one who had stayed. I was wrong. The lie had not protected her. It had spoiled her. It had turned her into a woman who despised the hand that fed her because she thought the food appeared by magic. I closed the binder on Beatrice's debts. I pushed it aside. Underneath it was another document. This one was newer. The ink was still fresh. It was the contract for the Sterling Estate venue. I had signed it 6 months ago as the guarantor. Since the fictional trust fund was paying, I had to sign off on the liability. But I had added a clause. I was a businessman after all. I dealt with contracts every day. I knew that people could be fickle. I knew that respect was often conditional. I put on my reading glasses and found the paragraph on page 12. Clause 14b. It was small text, standard font, easy to miss if you were a frantic bride or an arrogant groom who thought reading contracts was beneath him. The clause read, the validity of this agreement and the financial coverage provided by the guarantor, herein referred to as Lucian Graves, is contingent upon the guarantor's unrestricted access to the event. Should the guarantor be denied entry, removed by security, or otherwise barred from attending the festivities for any reason whatsoever, this contract is immediately null and void. All payments made by the guarantor will be retracted, and the full financial liability for the event will revert immediately to the hosts defined herein as the bride and groom. Furthermore, failure to secure immediate alternative payment upon the activation of this clause will result in the immediate termination of all services. It was a trap, a failsafe. I had written it into the contract not because I planned to use it, but because deep down, a part of me had whispered that this day might come. A part of me knew that Nia was drifting further and further away, seduced by the glitter of Brent's fake world. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was now 4 in the afternoon. The reception was entering its second hour. The main course was being served. The drinks were flowing. The bill for the alcohol alone was likely over $20,000. Nia and Brent were sitting at the head table feeling like royalty. They thought the bill was paid. They thought the check from the Beatrice Future Fund had cleared days ago. They did not know that the check was a cashier's draft controlled by the contract terms. I picked up my phone again. I dialed Dante's number. "It is time," I said. "Are you looking at the contract?" Sir Dante asked. "I am," I replied. "Clause 14B. Dante cleared his throat. "Once I send the notification to the venue management, the system is automated. The payment authorization will be withdrawn instantly. The venue manager is legally obligated to stop the event until new payment is secured. It will happen in real time." "I know," I said. Sir Dante paused. "If you do this, there is no going back. Nia will never forgive you. She will hate you for the rest of her life." "She already hates me, Dante," I said, my voice flat. "She hates the man she thinks I am. She hates the mechanic. She hates the grease. She hates the poverty she thinks I represent." I looked down at my hands. They were clean now, but the scars remained. "She is about to meet the other man," I said. "She is about to meet the man who owns the company. She is about to meet the man who signs the checks. Send the notification, Dante. Burn it down." "Yes, sir." The line went dead. I sat back in my chair and looked out the window of my cabin. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. I imagined the scene at the estate. I imagined the venue manager's tablet pinging with a high-priority notification. I imagined the color draining from his face as he read the alert. Payment revoked. Contract void. He would have to walk out onto the floor. He would have to interrupt the best man's speech. He would have to ask the bride and groom for a credit card with a $200,000 limit. And I knew for a fact that Brent's credit cards were maxed out. I knew that the Harringtons were drowning in debt. I knew that Nia had $40 in her checking account. The trap was sprung. The steel jaws were about to snap shut. And all I had to do was sit here in my quiet little house and wait for the phone to ring. Inside the ballroom, the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of polite laughter. On my phone screen, I watched as Brent signaled the waiters. It was time for the main event of the evening. A 6-foot-tall pyramid of crystal glasses stood in the center of the dance floor. It shimmered under the chandeliers, a monument to excess that cost more than the down payment on a modest home. Brent held a magnum of vintage champagne in his hands. It was a Nebuchadnezzar bottle the size of a small child, and it cost $10,000. He tapped a spoon against a glass, and the room fell silent. He looked the part of the wealthy heir perfectly. His tuxedo was tailored to the millimeter, and his hair was slicked back with expensive product. He flashed a smile that had charmed bankers and investors, but could not fool a man who built engines from scratch. Friends, family, and distinguished guests, Brent boomed, his voice amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. "Tonight we are not just celebrating a marriage, we are celebrating a merger of legacies. The Harrington name has always stood for excellence, for tradition, and for a standard of living that few can comprehend. When I look at my beautiful bride Nia, I see a woman worthy of that legacy. I see a woman who understands that quality is not just a preference, it is a birthright." He paused for applause. The guests clapped politely. Nia beamed, her face glowing with triumph. She believed every word. She believed she had married a prince. She did not know she had married a pauper in a rented suit. Brent continued, raising the massive bottle. "My parents taught me that you never settle for second best. You never compromise. That is why we chose this venue. That is why we are drinking this champagne, because we deserve it. To the Harringtons, to the future, and to a life without limits." He began to pour. The golden liquid cascaded down the tower of glasses, sparkling like liquid diamonds. The crowd cheered. It was the peak of their performance, the absolute zenith of their fraud. And then I saw him. Mr. Sterling, the venue manager, walked into the frame. He was a man I had hired personally because of his military background and his absolute adherence to protocol. He moved with a stiff, determined gait. He was holding a tablet in one hand and a microphone in the other. He did not look happy. He looked like a man who had just received a notification that threatened his bottom line. He walked straight up the steps of the small stage where the band was playing. He signaled the drummer to stop. The music died instantly with a discordant crash of cymbals. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence was confused, not respectful. Brent stopped pouring. He looked at Mr. Sterling with annoyance. "Excuse me," he said, his voice dripping with entitlement. "We are in the middle of a toast. Do you know who I am?" Mr. Sterling ignored him. He raised his own microphone. His voice was calm, professional, and loud enough to rattle the windows. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. I have an urgent announcement regarding the status of this event." Nia stepped forward, her dress rustling. "What is going on? This is highly inappropriate. Get off the stage." Mr. Sterling turned to her. His face was stone. "Mrs. Harrington, I have just received a system alert regarding the financing of this wedding. The primary guarantor of the contract has been denied entry to the premises." Nia laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "The guarantor? You mean the trust fund? My mother's trust fund pays for this. The guarantor is Mr. Lucian Graves," Mr. Sterling corrected her. "The contract explicitly states that if Mr. Graves is barred from the event for any reason, the contract is void and funding is retracted immediately." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw Mrs. Harrington clutch her pearls. Nia's face went pale. "That is ridiculous. My father is just the executor. He does not control the money. He left because he wanted to leave." Mr. Sterling looked down at his tablet. According to the security log at the front gate, Mr. Graves was explicitly banned by the bride. His photograph was posted with a "Do Not Admit" order. This constitutes a breach of contract clause 14B. The payment has been revoked. "Revoked!" Nia screeched. She looked around the room, realizing that everyone was watching. Her mask of perfection was slipping. "You cannot revoke a wire transfer. The money is already yours." The transfer was a conditional draft, Mr. Sterling explained. "It reverses automatically upon breach of contract. As of 2 minutes ago, the balance for this event is outstanding. The total due immediately is $212,000. The number hung in the air. $212,000. It was a fortune. Mr. Sterling continued. "Unless payment is rendered immediately in full via certified funds or an approved credit line, I am legally obligated to terminate this event." Brent stepped in, puffing out his chest. He looked like a cornered animal trying to look big. "This is an outrage. Do you know who my family is? We are Harringtons. We do not get shaken down by the help." "Then pay the bill, sir," Mr. Sterling said simply. Brent froze. I watched closely on my screen. I knew his bank account balance. It was negative $400. I knew his credit score. It was under 500. "Pay him, Brent," Nia hissed, grabbing his arm. "Use the black card, the one your parents gave us for the honeymoon. Just pay him so we can get rid of him and sue them later." Brent hesitated. He looked at his parents' table. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington were looking down at their plates, pretending to be invisible. They knew the card was a prop. It was a heavy metal card from a predatory lender with a $2,000 limit that was already maxed out on suit rentals. "Give it to me," Nia snapped. She reached into Brent's jacket pocket and pulled out the heavy black card. She marched up to Mr. Sterling. "Here, charge it, and then get out of my sight." Mr. Sterling took the card. He pulled a portable card reader from his pocket. He inserted the chip. The room held its breath. The machine beeped once, then twice. Mr. Sterling looked at the screen, then he looked at Nia, declined. Nia froze. "Try it again. It is a platinum account. It has no limit." Mr. Sterling tried it again. Beep. Declined. Code 51. Insufficient funds. He handed the card back to her. It was heavy and cold in her hand. "Do you have another form of payment?" Mr. Sterling asked. Nia looked at Brent. Brent looked at the floor. She looked at her new in-laws. They refused to make eye contact. She looked at the guests. The people she had tried so hard to impress were now whispering, pointing, and checking their watches. The illusion was dissolving in real time. "We can write a check," Nia stammered. "A personal check." "We do not accept personal checks for amounts over $500, Mr. Sterling said. "I need a verified transaction. Right now." Nia turned to the crowd. Her voice was thin and desperate. "Is there anyone? Can someone lend us a card just for a moment? We will wire you the money tomorrow. It is just a banking error. Please." Silence. Absolute crushing silence. The wealthy friends, the business partners, the socialites, nobody moved. They smelled the desperation. They smelled the fraud. They knew that rich people did not beg for credit cards at their own wedding. Mr. Sterling checked his watch. "Time is up." He raised a hand toward the tech booth in the back of the room. He made a cutting motion across his throat. "Cut it," he ordered. The reaction was instantaneous. A loud clunk echoed through the hall as the main breakers were thrown. The crystal chandeliers, which had been bathing the room in a warm, golden glow, flickered once and died. The room was plunged into the gray dimness of the late afternoon. Then the hum stopped. The low, constant hum of the industrial air conditioning units that were fighting the 90-degree July heat cut out. The silence was sudden and heavy. Without the microphone, Mr. Sterling's voice was still commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, this event is concluded. Please make your way to the exits in an orderly fashion. The venue is now closed." The guests began to mutter. Someone shouted, "Hey, we haven't even eaten the steak yet." The emergency lights flickered on, casting a harsh, ghostly green glow over the room. It made everyone look sick. It made the flowers look dead. Nia stood in the center of the dance floor in the dark. The air in the room was already starting to stagnate. The heat was creeping in from the glass walls. "You can't do this!" she screamed. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space without the amplification. It sounded small, weak. "Turn the lights back on. This is my wedding." Mr. Sterling turned his back on her. He began directing his staff to clear the tables. Waiters moved in quickly, snatching up half-finished glasses of wine and plates of appetizers. They were efficient. They knew the drill. No pay, no party. The guests began to stand up. Chairs scraped loudly against the floor. The magic was gone. The spell was broken. "This is unbelievable," I heard a woman say near the camera. "I told you they were living beyond their means." "Did you see his card decline?" "How embarrassing." "I am leaving," a man replied. "It is going to get hot in here fast." "What a waste of a Saturday." Nia grabbed Brent by the lapels of his jacket. "Do something," she shrieked. "Fix this." Brent pushed her hands away. He looked terrified. "I can't fix it, Nia. I don't have the money." "What do you mean you don't have the money?" Nia yelled. "You are a Harrington. You are a VP of Finance. I am a junior analyst," Nia. Brent shouted back, his facade cracking under the pressure. "And my parents are broke. We are all broke." The confession was loud enough for the first few rows of guests to hear. The ripple of shock moved through the crowd faster than the heat. Nia stepped back as if he had slapped her. She looked at him with horror. Then she looked at the dark room. She looked at the guests filing out. She looked at the security guards who were now moving in to escort people off the property. She pulled out her phone. I knew who she was going to call. She was going to call the one person who had always fixed everything. The one person who had always been there with a checkbook and a hug. She was going to call the man she had banned from the premises. I watched on my screen as she dialed. I picked up a sandwich from my plate. It was ham and cheese on white bread. It cost about $2 to make. My phone rang. The caller ID said Nia. I took a bite of my sandwich. I chewed slowly. I let it ring 3 times. Then I pressed the speakerphone button. "Hello," I said. My voice was calm. "Daddy," Nia screamed. Her voice was distorted by panic and poor signal. "Daddy, you have to come back. You have to come back right now." I looked at the screen. I saw her standing in the dark in her $20,000 dress surrounded by the wreckage of her vanity. I took another bite of my sandwich. "I am afraid I can't do that, sweetheart," I said. "I am just a mechanic. I don't belong at a wedding like that." And besides, I added, watching the last of the guests hurry toward the exit to escape the heat, "I am already home." The silence in my cabin was a stark contrast to the cacophony I was listening to on the other end of the line. I sat at my small Formica kitchen table with a paper plate in front of me. On it sat a ham and cheese sandwich with the crust cut off just the way I liked it, and a handful of potato chips. The only light in the room came from the setting sun filtering through the blinds and the glow of my smartphone screen. I took a sip of iced tea and leaned back in my creaking wooden chair. I pressed the speakerphone button a little harder, ensuring the connection was solid. "Daddy, are you listening to me?" Nia screamed. Her voice was shrill and distorted by the poor reception inside the now darkened ballroom. "You need to turn the car around right now. This is not funny. People are leaving." The manager shut off the power. "Do you hear me?" He shut off the power. I picked up a chip and crunched it slowly. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I swallowed before speaking. "I hear you, Nia," I said calmly. My voice was steady, devoid of the panic she was projecting. "I hear you perfectly fine." "Then where are you?" she demanded. I looked out the window. "I saw the security guard at the gate turn you away, but I assumed you would wait in the parking lot. I assumed you would call me to fix it." "Why did you leave?" I took a bite of my sandwich. The ham was salty and the bread was soft. It was a simple meal, but it tasted better than any filet mignon I had ever paid for. I left because I was told to leave, I replied after swallowing. I saw a sign, Nia. It was a very clear sign. It had my face on it. It said, "Do not admit. I am a law-abiding citizen. I do not trespass where I am not wanted." There was a pause on the line, followed by a sound of frustration that was halfway between a growl and a sob. "That was just for show, Daddy," she yelled. "It was for the Harringtons. You know how they are. They are particular. I just needed you to stay out of sight until the reception started. I needed you to not be you for 5 minutes. Is that so hard? Is it so hard to support your daughter without making it about yourself?" I put the sandwich down. The audacity was breathtaking. She was accusing me of making it about myself while standing in a room that cost $200,000 of my money. She was angry not because she had hurt me, but because I had refused to participate in my own humiliation. "Support you?" I asked, my voice dropping an octave. "I have supported you every day of your life, Naya. I supported you when you crashed your first car. I supported you when you changed majors 3 times in college. I supported you when you wanted this wedding. I paid for every rose, every glass of wine, and every minute of that band's time, and you supported me by putting my picture on a gate like a wanted criminal." "That is different," she shrieked. "This is my wedding. It is my day. You are ruining my day. Fix it. Call the manager. Tell him to turn the lights back on. Tell him the check is good." "The check is not good, Nia," I said. "The check was voided the moment I drove away. That is how contracts work. You breach the terms, you lose the funding." Suddenly there was a scuffling sound on the other end of the line. I heard Brent's voice muffled at first, then loud and aggressive as he snatched the phone from Nia's hands. "Listen to me, you old miserable fool," Brent shouted. I could hear the panic underneath his bravado. He was a man watching his life crumble, and he was looking for someone to punch. "You think this is a game? You think you can teach us a lesson? You are messing with the wrong people. I am messing with no one." "Brent," I said, "I am eating my dinner. If you do not transfer that money back into the account within 10 minutes, I will sue you for everything you have." Brent threatened. "I will sue you for emotional distress. I will sue you for breach of contract. I work in finance, old man. I know lawyers. I will bury you in legal fees until you lose that pathetic little shack you live in." I almost laughed. He had no idea. He was threatening a shark with a fishing rod made of twigs. "And let me tell you something else," Brent continued, his voice dropping to a sinister hiss. "Nia and I were talking about starting a family soon. We were going to make you a grandfather. But after this stunt, you will never see that child. Do you hear me? You will die alone without ever holding your grandchild. I will make sure of it." The air in my kitchen grew cold. That was the line. That was the point of no return. Up until that moment, a small, foolish part of me had hoped for an apology. I had hoped for a moment of clarity where they realized what they had done. But there was no clarity. There was only entitlement and cruelty. They were using an unborn, innocent child as a bargaining chip. They were weaponizing my legacy against me. I looked at the phone. I felt a strange sense of detachment. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, clinical resolve. "You are right, Brent," I said. My voice was no longer the voice of a father or a father-in-law. It was the voice of the CEO of Graves Logistics. It was the voice that negotiated mergers and fired executives. I do respect rules. And I respect boundaries. You have made yours very clear. "What is that supposed to mean?" Brent demanded. "It means I saw the sign. I said, 'Do not admit.' I am respecting the sign. I am respecting your wish to have a wedding without me. And now I am respecting your wish to live a life without me." I reached for the button to end the call. "Wait," Brent started to say, but I did not wait. I tapped the red icon on the screen. The line went dead. The screaming stopped. The threats vanished. The silence rushed back into the room, filling the corners of my cabin. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at my half-eaten sandwich. I was no longer hungry. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was turning a deep purple. The night was coming, and with it the storm I was about to unleash. They thought the wedding was the end of it. They thought the embarrassment at the venue was the punishment. They thought they could retreat to their penthouse, regroup, and come after me in the morning. They thought they had a safe harbor. They were wrong. I picked up the phone again. I did not call Nia. I did not call Brent. I scrolled down my contacts until I found Dante. I pressed call. He answered on the first ring. It was done, sir. The venue is dark. The guests are leaving. It is chaos. I know, I said. I just got off the phone with them. Did they apologize? Dante asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. No, I said. They threatened me. Brent threatened to keep my future grandchildren away from me. He threatened to sue me. There was a silence on the line, a heavy, dangerous silence. Dante knew me better than anyone. He knew that I could handle insults. He knew I could handle disrespect. But blackmail involving family was a declaration of war. What are your instructions? Sir Dante asked, his voice sharpening. The penthouse, I said. The lease is in the name of Graves Holdings, Dante confirmed. We pay the rent monthly. It is a corporate perk we extended to Nia under the guise of the trust fund. Cancel it, I said. Sir, it is 8 o'clock at night, Dante said. If we cancel the lease, access is revoked immediately. The electronic locks are controlled by the building's central server. If I send the termination order, their key fobs will stop working instantly. I know, I said. They will have nowhere to go. Dante pressed. They will be on the street. Their clothes, their furniture, their toiletries. Everything is inside. They have the Harringtons, I said. They can go to their parents' estate, the one Brent brags about. We both knew the truth about the Harrington estate. We knew it was leveraged to the hilt and currently undergoing foreclosure proceedings, but Nia and Brent did not know that yet. They needed a reality check. Execute the termination I ordered. Flag the account as a security risk. Instruct the building management to deny access. Tell them the occupants are unauthorized. Understood, Sir Dante said. I am logging into the portal now. It will be done in 2 minutes. I hung up the phone. I walked back to the table and picked up my plate. I scraped the rest of the sandwich into the trash. I washed the plate in the sink, watching the water swirl down the drain. In the city miles away, a computer server was receiving a command. A line of code was being rewritten. A green light on a door lock was turning red. Nia and Brent were leaving the wedding venue now. They were probably getting into their leased luxury car, exhausted, angry, and humiliated. They were driving toward the city, telling themselves that at least they had their beautiful apartment. At least they had their view of the skyline. At least they had a place to hide from the world. They were driving toward a locked door. I dried my hands on a dish towel. I felt a profound sense of sadness, but no regret. I had built the house they lived in. I had paid for the roof over their heads, and they had spat in my face. A man can only build so many shelters for people who want to burn them down. Eventually, you have to hand them the matches and let them stand in the ashes. I turned off the kitchen light, leaving the room in darkness. I walked to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I took off my work boots, placing them neatly side by side. The night was just beginning. And for my daughter and her husband, it was going to be a very long, very cold night. I sat in the darkness of my cabin, illuminated only by the cold blue light of my tablet screen. The security feed from the wedding venue was still active, though the picture was grainy in the emergency lighting. The scene unfolding was not a celebration, but an autopsy of a social climber's dream. The air conditioning had been off for 45 minutes, and the heat of the July evening had turned the glass-enclosed ballroom into a greenhouse. The guests were not just leaving, they were fleeing. I watched as women in silk gowns pushed past waiters to get to the exits, their makeup melting and their patience evaporating. In the center of the chaos stood Nia. She looked small. The train of her $20,000 dress was gray with dust from the floor where people had trampled over it in their haste to escape. She was not alone. The Harringtons had cornered her. I turned up the volume on the feed. The audio crackled, but the venom in Evelyn Harrington's voice cut through the static with crystal clarity. You are a fraud. Evelyn screamed, her face inches from my daughter's. Her pearls rattled as she shook with rage. You told us your family had money. You told us you were an heiress. You let us invite our senators, our business partners, and the mayor to this disaster. Do you have any idea what you have done to our reputation? Nia was sobbing now, her hands raised in a pathetic attempt to shield herself from the onslaught. It was a mistake, Evelyn, she pleaded. My father is confused. He is old and vindictive. I will fix it. I promise I will fix it. Fix it! Evelyn laughed, a harsh barking sound that made the few remaining guests flinch. You cannot fix this. You are a liar, Nia. A cheap little liar from a cheap little family. I knew we should have looked into your background. I knew your stories about trust funds and estates were too good to be true. You are nothing but a mechanic's daughter playing dress-up." The insult was meant to sting Nia, but it hit me with a dull thud. A mechanic's daughter. That is exactly what she was. And there was honor in that title until she decided to trade it for a counterfeit life. I watched as Brent tried to intervene. "Mother, please calm down," he said, his voice weak. "We need to figure out how to pay the venue manager so we can leave without being arrested." Evelyn turned on her son. "You are an idiot, Brent. You let this woman drag you into the mud. We are not paying a dime. This is her party. This is her mess. Let her father, the grease monkey, come and bail her out." She turned back to Nia. "Do not expect us to host you tonight. The estate is undergoing renovations. You are on your own." I knew that was a lie. The Harrington estate was not under renovation. It was under the scrutiny of bank auditors. They were terrified that Nia's financial collapse would trigger an investigation into their own fragile house of cards. They were cutting her loose to save themselves. The feed showed the guests filing out past the sobbing bride. I could hear their whispers as they passed the cameras. "Did you hear she tried to pay with a declined card?" one woman whispered. "I heard her father lives in a trailer park," a man replied. "It is disgusting," another said. Trying to climb the social ladder with no shoes. Nia stood there taking it all. The adoration she craved had turned into scorn. The envy she wanted to inspire had turned into pity. Her happy day had become a cautionary tale. I closed the app. I had seen enough. The first domino had fallen. An hour later, the GPS tracker on the company-leased Mercedes showed that Nia and Brent were in the city. They were speeding. They were heading for the one place they believed was still theirs, the penthouse apartment at the Spire. The Spire was the most exclusive residential building in the city, glass, steel, and marble. It was a fortress of wealth. I owned the building through a subsidiary corporation, but to Nia, it was just the place where the doorman knew her name and the elevator opened directly into her foyer. I imagined the conversation in the car. They were probably blaming me, blaming the venue, blaming the heat. They were probably telling themselves that once they got home, once they poured a drink and looked out at the skyline, they could spin this. They could call it a misunderstanding. They could survive. They pulled up to the curb. It was raining now, a sudden summer downpour that washed the city streets clean. They did not wait for the valet. They left the car running at the curb and ran for the glass doors. They reached the inner vestibule, the secure area before the lobby. Brent pulled his key fob from his pocket. He held it up to the black scanner pad. Usually the light would turn green and the heavy glass door would slide open with a welcoming hiss. Tonight the light turned red. A sharp beep echoed in the small space. Brent tried again. He rubbed the fob against his jacket thinking it was wet. He pressed it against the plastic. Beep. Red light. Access denied. I could see it in my mind perfectly, the confusion turning to panic. Nia shivering in her damp wedding dress, her hair plastered to her skull. "Try yours," she would be screaming. "Try yours." Nia would dig through her clutch purse, finding her own fob. She would press it to the scanner. Beep. Red light. They were locked out. The glass door was a barrier as impenetrable as the vault at a bank. Through the glass they could see the lobby. It was warm and dry inside. The chandelier was glowing. Behind the marble concierge desk stood Mr. Henderson. He was a man of 60, a former Marine who took his job very seriously. I had called him 10 minutes ago. I had given him a direct order. Nia banged on the glass. Mr. Henderson opened the door. "It is us. The key isn't working." Mr. Henderson looked up from his monitor. He did not smile. He did not rush to help. He picked up a phone on his desk, pressed a button, and spoke into the intercom system. His voice would be coming through the speaker in the vestibule loud and clear. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. I am afraid I cannot grant you access." "What are you talking about?" Brent yelled, pounding his fist against the door. "We live here. Open the damn door." "Your lease has been terminated effective immediately," Mr. Henderson said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The owner of the unit has invoked the morality and respect clause of the rental agreement. You have been designated as unauthorized persons." The owner, Nia, screamed. "My mother's trust owns this apartment. You cannot kick us out. I will have your job for this." "The unit is owned by Graves Holdings," Mr. Henderson corrected her. "Mr. Lucian Graves personally called to revoke your access. He stated that the occupants have violated the terms of their occupancy by conducting themselves in a manner that brings shame to the grave's name. Nia stopped banging on the glass. She slumped against the door, leaving a smear of condensation. She realized then that the trust fund was a ghost. There was no Beatrice fund. There was only Lucian. There was only the father she had erased from her life. "But my things," Brent stammered. "My suits, my watches, Nia's jewelry. Everything we own is in there. You cannot just keep our property. That is illegal." Mr. Henderson stepped out from behind the desk. He walked slowly toward the glass door. He stopped just on the other side, looking at them through the transparent barrier. He looked at Brent's wet tuxedo. He looked at Nia's ruined dress. "We have not kept your property, sir," Mr. Henderson said. "We are not a storage facility. Per the instructions of the landlord, your personal effects were removed from the unit immediately upon lease termination." "Removed," Nia whispered. "Removed to where?" Mr. Henderson pointed a gloved hand toward the side of the building, toward the service entrance alleyway. "Your belongings have been placed on the curb for collection. I suggest you retrieve them quickly. The sanitation department collects large refuse at dawn." He turned his back on them and walked back to his desk. He sat down and began typing on his computer, ignoring their screams. Nia and Brent ran back out into the rain. They rounded the corner of the building to the service alley. The streetlights flickered overhead, illuminating the scene. There, on the wet concrete, sat a mountain of black plastic trash bags. There were dozens of them piled haphazardly against the brick wall. They were not stacked with care. They were thrown. Nia ran to the nearest bag. She ripped it open with her manicured nails. A cascade of silk and chiffon spilled out onto the dirty puddle water. It was her designer wardrobe, her coats, her shoes, her handbags, everything she had bought to prove she was better than everyone else. She pulled out a Chanel bag. It was soaked. The leather was already staining from the water. She grabbed a shoe. The heel was snapped off. "No," she wailed. "No, no, no." Brent was tearing open other bags. He found his collection of ties knotted together in a ball. He found his expensive Italian loafers scuffed and wet. He found his gaming console with the cords cut. "This is trash," he yelled, kicking a bag. "He treated our stuff like trash. He treated it the way you treated him," I thought as I imagined the scene. The rain fell harder, turning the alley into a river. The water rushed around their ankles, soaking their wedding clothes, ruining the leather of their shoes. They stood amidst the wreckage of their materialism. The Gucci labels, the Prada logos, the symbols of their status were now just wet garbage waiting for the garbage truck. Nia fell to her knees in the middle of the alley. She clutched a wet cashmere sweater to her chest. She looked up at the sky and screamed a sound of pure, primal frustration. But nobody heard her. The city was loud and indifferent. The rain washed away her tears. And high above in the penthouse they used to call home, the lights went out one by one as the automated system shut down the unit for the night. They had no home. They had no money. They had no family to run to. They were exactly where they deserved to be, in the alley with the rest of the refuse. I stood up from my bed and walked to the window of my cabin. The rain had started here too. It beat against the glass, a steady rhythm. I wondered if they would learn. I wondered if the cold and the wet and the humiliation would crack the shell of their entitlement, or if they would just become harder, more bitter, more convinced that the world owed them something. I did not know. And for the first time in 28 years, I decided it was not my job to find out. I closed the blinds. I turned off the light. I got into bed and pulled the quilt up to my chin. The silence in the house was deep and restful. It was the silence of a job finished. It was the silence of a debt paid in full. I closed my eyes and slept. The alleyway behind the spire was a wind tunnel channeling the storm directly into the huddled forms of my daughter and her new husband. They stood ankle-deep in the runoff from the street, shivering violently as the cold rain plastered their expensive clothes to their skin. The adrenaline of the eviction was fading, replaced by a bone-deep chill and a creeping terror. Nia hugged her arms around her chest, her teeth chattering so loud it sounded like a wind-up toy. She looked at Brent with wide, pleading eyes, waiting for him to save them, waiting for the Harrington safety net to deploy. Brent was fumbling with his phone, his fingers slippery and numb. He was dialing his mother, Evelyn. I could imagine the thought process looping in his mind. This was just a setback, a terrible misunderstanding. His parents would fix it. They would laugh about this over brandy in the library of the Harrington estate. They would send the driver to pick them up. They would sue me in the morning. He put the phone to his ear, his face a mask of desperate hope. I knew exactly what was happening because I was still monitoring the family plan account I paid for. I could see the call connect. Mother Brent shouted over the sound of the rain. "Mother, you have to help us. It is a disaster. That lunatic Graves canceled the wedding and kicked us out of the apartment. We are on the street. We are literally in the garbage alley behind the spire." There was a pause on the line. Then Evelyn's voice came through, tinny and tight. "Oh, Brent, that is unfortunate." "Unfortunate," Brent screamed. "Mother, we are soaking wet. We have nowhere to go. Send the car. Or just tell us the gate code again, I think I forgot it. We are catching a cab to the estate right now. Have the staff prepare the guest wing. We need dry clothes and a hot meal." He waited for the reassurance. He waited for the warm invitation. Brent, Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You cannot come here. What do you mean we cannot come there?" Brent asked, his brow furrowing in confusion, water dripping from his nose. "Is the renovation that bad?" "We do not care about the dust, Mother. We just need a roof." "It is not a renovation," Evelyn snapped. Her patience was gone, eroded by the stress of her own lies. "There is no renovation. There is no guest wing." Brent froze. "What are you saying?" "We lost the house," Brent, Evelyn hissed. "The bank took it 6 months ago. We have been living in a 2-bedroom rental in East Side since February. We cannot host you. There is no room. There is barely room for your father and me." The phone almost slipped from Brent's hand. He looked as if he had been struck by lightning. Naya stepped closer, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "What is she saying?" Naya asked, her voice trembling. "Is the car coming?" Brent ignored her. He was staring at the wet brick wall in front of him, his reality fracturing. "You lost the estate," he whispered into the phone. "But you said it was just restructuring. You said we were liquid. We lied, you idiot." Evelyn shouted, her voice loud enough for Nia to hear. "We lied because we thought you were marrying an heiress. We thought this girl came with a trust fund. We were counting on her money to get us back on our feet. We spent the last of our savings on those wedding outfits thinking it was an investment." The truth hung in the rain-soaked air, heavy and suffocating. The Harringtons were not eccentric socialites. They were destitute. They were frauds. They had looked at Nia not as a daughter-in-law, but as a lottery ticket. And now that the ticket was a loser, they were discarding it. "So you are telling me," Brent stammered, his voice rising in panic. "You are telling me you have nothing. I am telling you to figure it out," Evelyn said coldly. "You are a married man now. Use your wife's money." "Oh, wait. She does not have any either, does she? You two deserve each other. Do not come to the apartment, Brent. The landlord does not allow overnight guests." The line went dead. Brent lowered the phone slowly. He looked at the black screen, his reflection distorted by the water droplets. The grand Harrington legacy, the safety net, the inheritance, it was all gone. It had never existed. He was not a prince in exile. He was a pauper in a wet tuxedo, standing in an alleyway with a wife he did not love and a mountain of trash bags. Nia grabbed his arm, shaking him. "Brent, what did she say? Why can't we go to the estate? Where are we going?" Brent turned to look at her. The street lamp above them flickered, casting his face in shadow. His eyes were dark, hollow pits. The charm, the sophistication, the polished veneer of the finance bro was gone. In its place was something ugly, something raw and feral. "There is no estate," he said, his voice flat. "What?" Nia asked, her brow furrowing. "My parents are broke," Brent said. He started to laugh, a low, manic sound that had no humor in it. "They are broke, Nia. They lost the house months ago. They were waiting for your money to save them." Nia stepped back, her heels scraping against the wet pavement. "That is impossible. You are a Harrington. You have millions. You told me you have millions." "I lied." Brent shouted, the laughter turning into a snarl. "Just like you lied. Just like your father lied. We are all liars, Nia, but at least my parents aren't vindictive psychopaths who lock their children out in the rain." Nia felt the panic rising in her throat like bile. She looked around the alley looking for an escape, looking for a solution. There was none. There was only the rain and the trash and the man she had married. "We have to go somewhere," she cried. "We have to book a hotel. Use your card, Brent, the one you use for work." "I don't have a card, you stupid woman," Brent yelled. "I am a junior analyst. I make $40,000 a year. I spend it all on this wedding. I spend it all on you thinking I was investing in a future, but you are worthless." He took a step toward her. His hands were clenched into fists. The frustration of a lifetime of entitlement was boiling over. He needed a target. He needed someone to blame for his failure. And Nia was right there. "It is your fault," he spat. "It is all your fault. If you hadn't been so ashamed of your father, if you hadn't put that sign on the gate, none of this would have happened. He would still be paying the bills. We would be in the penthouse right now drinking wine." Nia shook her head, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "Don't you dare blame me. You were the one who called him a grease monkey. You were the one who said he would embarrass us. Because he is a grease monkey," Brent screamed. "But at least he has money. You are nothing. You are a mechanic's daughter in a dress you can't afford. You tricked me. You trapped me." He lunged at her. It wasn't a punch, but a shove, a violent release of energy. His hands hit her shoulders hard. Nia stumbled backward. Her heel caught on a crack in the concrete. She flailed her arms trying to find balance, but there was nothing to hold on to. She fell hard, landing on her side in the pile of black trash bags. The plastic ripped under her weight. Her hand plunged into a bag filled with wet coffee grounds and old takeout containers from the restaurant next door. She gasped, struggling to sit up. Her white wedding dress was now smeared with brown sludge and street grime. She looked up at Brent. She expected to see regret. She expected him to offer her a hand to help her up, to apologize. Instead, she saw disgust. "Look at you," Brent sneered, looking down at her as if she were part of the garbage she was sitting in. "You look like you belong there. Trash. That is all you are." He turned his back on her. He walked over to the pile of their belongings and grabbed a single bag that looked like it contained his clothes. He did not check to see if she was hurt. He did not look back. "Where are you going?" Nia screamed, scrambling to her feet, slipping in the muck. "You can't leave me here. We are married." "Not for long," Brent called back over his shoulder. "I am going to a friend's house, alone. Do not follow me." He walked out of the alley and turned the corner, disappearing into the rainy night. Nia stood alone in the dark alley. The smell of rotting food and wet cardboard filled her nose. She looked down at her dress. The lace was torn. The silk was stained. The symbol of her perfect day was ruined beyond repair. She realized then with a clarity that cut through the cold that she had been completely and utterly wrong. She had thought Brent was her savior. She had thought he was her ticket to a better life. She had thought he loved her. But he didn't love her. He loved the idea of her. He loved the trust fund he thought she had. And the moment the money vanished, so did the love. She was not a Harrington. She was not a princess. She was Nia Graves, the daughter of a man she had banned from her life, standing in an alley, covered in trash, abandoned by a husband who had just assaulted her. She reached into her bodice and pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked from the fall. She pressed the power button. It flickered and died. The battery was dead. She was alone. No money, no phone, no husband, no home. She slid down the brick wall until she was sitting on the wet pavement, hugging her knees to her chest. She began to cry, not the pretty, delicate tears she had practiced for the altar, but deep, ugly, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. For the first time in her life, she had hit rock bottom. And as she sat there in the rain, she realized that the only person who had ever truly caught her when she fell was the man she had left standing at the gate. But she knew with a sinking feeling in her gut that this time he was not coming back. The bridge was not just burned. It was reduced to ash, and she was the one holding the torch. The sun rose over the pines, casting long shadows across the gravel driveway of the cabin I had called home for 20 years. Through the remote access security cameras, I watched a scene that was equal parts pathetic and threatening. The leased silver Mercedes, the one Brent had bragged about leasing for a song, rolled up the drive. It was no longer gleaming. It was covered in mud from the storm, and there was a fresh dent in the front bumper, likely from a careless maneuver during their flight from the city. The engine cut out, and for a moment there was silence. Then the doors flew open. Nia stepped out first. She was still wearing her wedding dress, but it was a ruin of gray lace and mud stains. She had ripped the veil off, and her hair was a tangled mess of hairspray and knots. She looked like a ghost that had crawled out of a swamp, but her eyes were alive with a manic fury. She did not look like a daughter coming to make peace. She looked like a creditor coming to collect a debt she believed she was owed. Brent followed her. He had shed his tuxedo jacket, and his white shirt was stained with sweat and dirt. He marched toward the front porch, his expensive loafers crunching on the gravel. He looked dangerous. He looked like a man who had lost everything and decided that violence was the only currency he had left. I watched from the comfort of my office in the city, sipping black coffee as they stormed the wooden steps of the porch. "Open the door," old man Brent screamed, pounding his fist against the wood. "We know you are in there. You owe us a check. You owe us an explanation." Nia was right behind him. "Daddy, stop hiding. We slept in the car. Do you hear me? We slept in a parking lot because you locked us out. Open this door right now or Brent is going to break it down." I sat back in my leather chair. They still did not get it. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought they could bully the mechanic into submission, just like they had bullied the wedding planner and the florists. They did not realize that the mechanic had retired hours ago. Brent did not wait for an answer. He took a step back and kicked the door right near the lock. The wood splintered. It was an old door on an old house. It gave way easily. With a loud crack, it swung open, bouncing off the interior wall. They rushed inside, ready for a fight. They were ready to find me sitting in my recliner, cowering in fear. They were ready to scream and threaten until I pulled out the checkbook to make them stop. Instead, they skidded to a halt in the middle of the living room. The silence in the cabin was absolute. It was not the silence of a sleeping house. It was the silence of a tomb. The room was empty, completely empty. The recliner was gone. The television was gone. The shelves where I kept my collection of vintage manuals were bare. The rugs had been rolled up and taken away. There was nothing but dust motes dancing in the morning light and the rectangular outlines on the walls where pictures used to hang. Nia spun around looking at the kitchen. The table was gone. The refrigerator was gone. The cabinets were open and bare. "He is gone," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "He packed up." How did he pack up so fast? He did not pack up fast. Brent spat, kicking a pile of dust in the corner. He planned this. The old snake planned this whole thing. He knew he was going to screw us. They walked through the empty rooms, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. They checked the bedroom. The mattress was gone. The closet was empty. There was not a sock or a shirt left behind. I had hired a crew 2 days ago to clear the place out the moment I left for the wedding. I knew I was never coming back to this life. This cabin was a costume I no longer needed to wear. In the center of the living room floor sat a single wooden stool. On the stool was a white envelope. Nia saw it first. She ran to it, snatching it up as if it contained the deed to the estate. She ripped it open. Her hands shook violently. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not a check. It was a copy of a bill of sale. "He sold it," she gasped. She read the document, her eyes widening. "He sold the land. The closing date was yesterday. The new owners are a development corporation. They are bulldozing this place on Monday." Brent snatched the paper from her. He read the numbers. $80,000. That is what he got for this dump. 80 grand. Where is that money? He has it on him. We have to find him. Find him where Nia screamed, throwing her hands up. "He is gone, Brent. He vanished. He has the money. He has the accounts. He has everything. We have nothing. Look at us. We are homeless." She collapsed onto the floor, her dress ballooning around her like a wilting flower. She put her face in her hands and began to sob dry, heaving sobs of exhaustion and defeat. But Brent was not defeated. He was enraged. He was a cornered rat, and rats have sharp teeth. He paced the empty room, his mind working furiously. He was a tech guy, a finance guy. He lived in a world of data and tracking. He stopped pacing. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "He is not gone. Nia," he said, "he is an old man. He is a creature of habit. And he is stupid." "What are you talking about?" Nia asked, looking up, her mascara running down her cheeks. "The family plan," Brent said, pulling his phone from his pocket. "He pays for our phones, Nia. He insisted on the family bundle to save $10 a month, remember? He is the account holder, but I have the login credentials because I set up the autopay for him last year." He tapped furiously on his screen. His fingers danced over the glass. "I can track him," Brent said. "I can track every device on the plan, including his ancient flip phone. He thinks he is smart, but he does not know how technology works." I watched on my monitor as Brent accessed the carrier app. I saw the blue dot appear on his map. I had left the GPS on intentionally. I wanted them to find me. I wanted them to come to me, but I wanted them to come with the wrong assumptions. "Got him," Brent shouted triumphantly. He held the phone up for Nia to see. "Where is he?" Nia asked, wiping her eyes. "Is he at a hotel? Is he at the airport?" "He is at work." Brent laughed, a harsh barking sound. Look at the location. It is the industrial district, specifically the loading docks on the south side. Nia frowned. Why would he be there? It is Sunday morning. Because he is broke, Nia Brent sneered. He probably picked up a weekend shift driving a truck or sweeping floors. He probably needs that 80 grand from the house to pay off his own debts. Do you see? He is just a worker. He is hiding at his job because he has nowhere else to go either. The narrative formed instantly in their minds. It fit their worldview perfectly. Lucian the mechanic, Lucian the laborer, Lucian the man who smelled of diesel and sweat. Of course he was at the industrial park. That was where men like him belonged. We are going to go there, Brent said, grabbing Nia's arm and pulling her to her feet. We are going to go to his job. We are going to make a scene in front of his boss. We are going to shame him until he hands over that check. But I look terrible, Nia moaned, looking down at her dress. Good, Brent said. You look like a victim. We will tell everyone he abandoned you on your wedding day. We will tell his coworkers what a monster he is. We will destroy his reputation at the only place that will still hire him. And then we will take the money. He dragged her toward the door. They did not close it behind them. They left the cabin open to the elements just as they had left our relationship. They got back into the Mercedes. Brent revved the engine. He drove aggressively, tires spinning in the gravel, sending stones flying. They sped down the driveway, heading toward the highway, heading toward the industrial district. I watched them go. I took another sip of my coffee. It was a single origin roast served in a bone china cup. They were driving toward the heart of the city, toward the sprawling complex of steel and glass that dominated the skyline of the industrial sector. They saw the location on the map and they saw a loading dock. They saw a place of manual labor. They did not know that the blue dot on their screen was blinking directly over the executive penthouse suite of the Graves Logistics Tower. They did not know that the industrial park they were sneering at was owned entirely by the man they were coming to rob. They were coming to embarrass a truck driver. They were about to walk into the lion's den and slap the lion. I picked up my desk phone and dialed security. Mr. Graves, the head of security, answered instantly. I am expecting visitors, I said. A young couple, disheveled, aggressive. They will be driving a silver Mercedes. Shall we stop them at the gate, sir? No, I said. Let them in. Let them come all the way up to the executive lobby. I want to see their faces when the elevator doors open. Understood, sir. I hung up. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office. From here I could see the highway. I could see the stream of cars moving like ants. Somewhere in that stream was my daughter coming to claim her inheritance. She was about to find out that the only thing she had inherited was my stubbornness. And against me, that was not an asset. It was a liability. I buttoned my suit jacket. It was a bespoke Italian-cut navy blue silk. It cost $5,000. I adjusted my cuffs. I checked my reflection in the glass. The mechanic was gone. The CEO was waiting, and the meeting was about to begin. The Graves Logistics Tower rose from the concrete of the industrial district like a shard of black obsidian piercing the sky. It was 40 stories of tinted glass and steel, a monument to American commerce that dominated the skyline for miles. To the uninitiated, it was just another corporate fortress. To Nia and Brent, speeding toward it in their mud-splattered Mercedes, it was just the place where the help worked. They parked illegally in the circle drive right in front of the main entrance, ignoring the horrified look of the uniformed doorman who stepped forward to intercept them. They did not see the architecture. They did not see the power. They only saw a loading dock address that they had misinterpreted on a tracking app. I watched from the security monitors in my penthouse office as they stormed through the revolving doors. They looked like refugees from a disaster zone. Nia's dress was a gray rag dragging on the polished marble floor, leaving a trail of wet grit. Brent was shirtless under his tuxedo jacket, his chest heaving with exertion and rage. They marched straight to the reception desk in the center of the atrium, a desk carved from a single block of black granite that cost more than the house they had just visited. The receptionist was a young woman named Sarah, impeccable in her company uniform. She looked up with wide eyes as these two lunatics slammed their hands onto her pristine workspace. "We want," Lucian Brent bellowed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Get him down here right now." Sarah blinked, confused but professional. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "Appointment." Brent laughed, a manic sound that drew the attention of every suit-clad executive in the lobby. I do not need an appointment to see a janitor. He is hiding here. His phone says he is here. Page him. Tell him his daughter is here to collect what he owes her. Nia leaned over the desk, her mascara smeared around her eyes like war paint. Just check the roster for the drivers, she snapped. Or maybe the mechanics. His name is Lucian Graves. He is an old man probably sweeping a floor somewhere in the back. Tell him to get his ass out here before I call the police and tell them he stole my money. I could see Sarah's face shift from confusion to something else. Recognition. She knew the name Lucian Graves. Everyone in the building knew the name. It was signed on their paychecks. It was etched into the cornerstone of the building. But she could not reconcile the image of the man on the top floor with the description of the janitor these people were screaming for. I am sorry, Ma, Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. There is no one on the maintenance staff by that name. Do not lie to me, Nia shrieked, slamming her hand on the marble. I know he is here. He is a nobody, a grease monkey. Just find him. Security was already moving in. 3 large men in dark suits materialized from the edges of the lobby. They did not look like the rent-a-cops at the wedding venue. These were professionals, ex-military men who guarded billions of dollars in assets. Sir Ma, please step back, the head of lobby security said, firmly placing himself between Brent and the receptionist. You are causing a disturbance. We are not going anywhere until we see him. Brent shouted, spinning around to face the guard. He poked a finger into the guard's chest. You work for a trucking company, pal. Do not act like you are Secret Service. Now go fetch the old man. The guard did not flinch. He simply grabbed Brent's wrist and twisted it, removing the finger from his chest with a movement so fast it was a blur. He shoved Brent backward. Brent stumbled, tripping over his own feet and landing hard on the polished floor. Nia screamed, You assaulted him! I will sue this whole company! Do you know who my father is? The guard looked at her with a mixture of pity and steel. No, Ma, I do not. But I know who owns this building, and I suggest you leave before you are arrested for trespassing. He pointed toward the exit, but his gesture encompassed something else. Directly behind the reception desk, rising 20 feet high on the back wall of the atrium, was a massive oil painting. It was a portrait commissioned 10 years ago for the company's 30th anniversary. Nia's eyes followed the guard's hand. She stopped screaming. Her mouth fell open. The painting depicted a man standing in front of a fleet of trucks, his arms crossed, his gaze steady and commanding. He was wearing a navy blue suit. His hair was gray but styled perfectly. The artist had captured the strength in his jaw, the intelligence in his eyes. It was me. But it was not the version of me Nia knew. It was not the man in coveralls wiping oil from his hands with a rag. It was the Titan. Below the portrait in raised gold lettering were the words Lucian Graves, founder and CEO. Nia stared at the painting. She blinked rapidly as if trying to clear a hallucination. She looked at the face in the oil paint. Then she looked at the logo on the wall next to it, the stylized G with the wings. She had seen that logo 1,000 times. She had seen it on the sides of 18-wheelers passing her on the interstate. She had seen it on shipping containers at the port. She had seen it on the invoices I had left on the kitchen table, which she had never bothered to read. Graves Logistics, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. Graves. She turned to Brent, who was scrambling to his feet. Brent, look. Brent looked. He froze. He squinted at the painting. That is him, he muttered. That is the old man. Why is he in a suit? Why is his picture so big? He is not the janitor, Nia said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. She looked around the lobby. She looked at the granite floors, the glass elevators, the army of employees moving with purpose. She looked at the sheer scale of the wealth surrounding her. He owns it, she whispered. He owns all of it. The silence that fell over them was absolute. The anger drained out of their bodies, replaced by a cold, terrifying clarity. They had not been insulting a failure. They had been spitting in the face of a king. I stood up from my desk. It was time. I walked to the private elevator in my office suite. Dante was already there waiting for me. He held a tablet in his hand and wore a grim expression. Ready, sir, he asked. I nodded. I adjusted my cuffs. I buttoned my jacket. I checked my reflection in the elevator doors. The mechanic was dead and buried. We stepped into the car and Dante pressed the button for the lobby. The descent took 30 seconds. 30 seconds to transition from the ivory tower to the battlefield. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The sound cut through the murmurs in the lobby. Heads turned. The security guards snapped to attention. Sarah, the receptionist, stood up straight. I stepped out. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who owns the ground he walks on. My Italian leather shoes clicked rhythmically on the marble. The navy blue suit fit me like a second skin tailored to hide the age and highlight the power. Nia and Brent stood in the center of the atrium looking like shipwreck survivors washed up on a hostile shore. They saw me coming. Nia's eyes widened until I thought they might split. She looked from the painting to me and back again. The resemblance was undeniable, but the reality was even more imposing. I was not a static image. I was a force of nature. Daddy, she breathed. She took a step forward, her hands reaching out instinctively. She looked at my suit. She looked at the way the light caught the silk of my tie. She looked at Dante walking a step behind me, looking like a dangerous shadow. I stopped 10 feet away from them. I did not smile. I did not open my arms. I looked at them with the same detached, clinical interest I would use to inspect a broken engine part. "Who are these people?" I asked, looking at the head of security. Nia flinched as if I had struck her. "Daddy, it is me. It is Nia, your daughter." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the ruins of the dress I had paid for. I saw the panic in her eyes. I saw the greed that was still there lurking behind the fear. "My daughter is getting married today," I said, my voice cool and level carrying across the silent lobby. "She is at a beautiful estate surrounded by her loving family. She specifically requested that I not be present." "But we are here," Nia cried, tears streaming down her face, cutting through the dirt. "The wedding was canceled. You canceled it. You have to help us. We lost everything." I looked at Brent. He was staring at my shoes. He was realizing that the man he had called a grease monkey could buy and sell his entire existence before lunch. "You seem confused," I said. "You are looking for a mechanic, a man who lives in a cabin, a man you can bully and discard when he is no longer useful." I took a step closer. The air around me seemed to drop in temperature. "That man does not work here," I said. "That man does not exist anymore." Brent found his voice. It was a squeak, a pathetic sound. "Sir Mr. Graves, we did not know. We thought." "You thought what?" I interrupted him, my voice sharp as a razor. "You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought you could take my money, smile in my face, and then lock me out of the gate." I gestured to the building around us. "You drove past my trucks every day for 20 years, I said. "You saw my name on the highway. You saw the bills I paid. You never asked. You never cared. You were so busy looking down on me that you never looked up to see who was holding the roof over your head." Nia fell to her knees. It was a dramatic gesture fueled by exhaustion and the crushing weight of regret. "Daddy, please. I am sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Just take us back. We have nowhere to go." I looked down at her. I remembered the little girl who used to sit on my lap and ask me to read her stories. I remembered the teenager who rolled her eyes when I came home with dirt under my fingernails. I remembered the bride who put my face on a wanted poster. I turned to Dante. "Mr. Dante," I said, "these individuals are trespassing. They are disturbing the peace of my employees. Please escort them off the property." Nia gasped. "Daddy, no. You can't." I turned my back on them. I walked back toward the elevator. "Remove them," I ordered over my shoulder. The security guards moved in. They were not gentle. They grabbed Brent by the arms. They pulled Nia to her feet. I heard them screaming as the elevator doors closed. I heard Nia calling my name one last time, a sound full of heartbreak and terror. But the doors sealed shut. The silence returned. I was rising again, back to the top of the tower, back to the sky, leaving the wreckage of my family on the ground floor where they belonged. The security guards had their hands on Brent's arms, ready to drag him toward the revolving doors. But the young man was not done fighting. He was fueled by a potent mixture of adrenaline and the desperate delusion that he still held some cards in a game he had already lost. He wrenched his arm free with a violent jerk, stepping back from the guards. He straightened his tuxedo jacket, trying to reclaim a shred of the dignity he had left in the mud outside. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing with a malice that replaced his earlier fear. He decided in that split second that if he could not beg for mercy, he would demand respect through fear. "Wait!" Brent shouted, his voice cracking but loud enough to echo in the silent lobby. "Just wait 1 second. You think you can just throw me out like trash. You think you are the only one with power here. You are a trucking magnate, Lucian. You move boxes. You deal in diesel and tires. I deal in capital. I deal in the markets that allow companies like yours to exist." I held up a hand, signaling the guards to pause. I was curious. I wanted to see just how deep his delusion ran. I wanted to see the full extent of the man my daughter had chosen over her own blood. Brent stepped forward, emboldened by my hesitation. He puffed out his chest. "I am the Chief Financial Officer of Nexus FinTech," he announced. "We are the fastest-growing financial technology firm in the sector. We control algorithms that can shift market caps in seconds. I have friends at the exchange. I have contacts in the media. If you throw us out on the street, I will make it my personal mission to destroy your stock price. I will leak rumors about insolvency. I will short your company until you are begging for a bailout. I will turn Graves Logistics into a penny stock before the market closes on Monday." Nia looked at her husband with a flicker of hope. She had always believed his lies about his career. She believed he was a titan of industry, just temporarily embarrassed by cash flow issues. She nodded, wiping her tears, looking at me with a defiant sneer. "You hear him, Daddy," she said. "Brent knows people. You do not want to start a war with him. Just write us a check, and we will forget this whole ugly scene. We will go away and let you keep your little trucking company intact." I looked at Brent. I looked at his cheap watch, which he tried to pass off as a Rolex. I looked at his eyes, which darted around the room, nervously betraying his bravado. He was a child playing with matches in a dynamite factory. He thought he was threatening me. He did not realize he was standing in the crater of a bomb that had already detonated. I did not speak immediately. I let his threat hang in the air. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until Brent started to sweat again. I walked slowly toward the reception desk. I picked up a remote control that lay next to Sarah's computer. "You are the CFO of Nexus FinTech?" I asked, my voice calm and conversational. "That is right," Brent said, adjusting his cuffs. "And I am vital to their operations. They listen to me." I nodded slowly. "Nexus. That is the firm down on 4th Street. The one that specializes in high-frequency trading and automated asset management." Brent looked surprised that I knew the details. "Yes," he said. "We are the future. You are the past." I pointed the remote at the massive LED screen mounted on the wall of the waiting area. It was tuned to a business news channel, the ticker tape scrolling endlessly along the bottom. "Turn up the volume, Dante," I said. "Oh." Dante stepped forward and adjusted the sound. The voice of the news anchor filled the lobby. "Breaking news this morning in the tech sector," the anchor said. "A major acquisition has just been finalized, sending shockwaves through the market. Graves Holdings, the parent company of Graves Logistics, has announced the complete cash buyout of Nexus FinTech. The deal, valued at $40 million, was closed just before the opening bell." Brent froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He turned slowly to look at the screen. The headline was flashing in bold red letters. "Graves acquires Nexus." I stepped closer to him. My voice was low, intimate, and cold as the grave. "I am not a trucking magnate, Brent," I said. "I am a capitalist. I saw your company's quarterly reports. They were weak. Your leadership was over-leveraged. So I made a phone call this morning while I was drinking my coffee." I took another step. He retreated. "I bought your company, Brent. I bought the building you work in. I bought the servers your algorithms run on. I bought the chair you sit in. I own every paperclip on your desk." Nia gasped, clutching Brent's arm. "You bought his company," she whispered. "Why?" I looked at Brent. I looked deep into his eyes, and I saw the moment his soul broke. "I did not buy it for the technology," I said. "I did not buy it for the market share. I bought it for one reason and one reason only." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle on his shoulders. "I bought it to fire you." Brent shook his head. "No, you can't. That is illegal. That is retaliation. It is ownership," I corrected him. "And as the new owner, I have ordered a full internal audit of the financial department, specifically the accounts managed by the so-called CFO." Brent's face went from pale to a sickly gray. He knew what was in those accounts. He knew what the auditors would find. He started to back away, reaching for Nia's hand, but his grip was weak. "We have to go," he whispered. "We have to go right now, Nia." But before they could turn, the sound of a cell phone ringing cut through the air. It was Brent's phone. It rang loud and shrill, a frantic sound in the quiet lobby. Brent stared at his pocket. He did not want to answer it. He knew who it was. "Answer it," I commanded. "It is rude to keep your boss waiting." His hand trembling violently, Brent pulled the phone from his pocket. The caller ID was visible on the screen. It said, HR Director. He pressed accept and held the phone to his ear. He did not say hello, he just listened. I could hear the voice on the other end. It was loud, angry, and efficient. Mr. Harrington, the voice barked, this is a formal notification of your immediate termination for cause. Security is currently clearing out your office. You are barred from the premises effective immediately. Brent closed his eyes. He swayed on his feet, but the voice was not done. Furthermore, the preliminary audit conducted by the new ownership team has flagged multiple irregularities in the client escrow accounts. We have found transfers totaling $150,000 into a private account linked to your name. We have turned this evidence over to the district attorney and the federal authorities. The police are on their way to your home address now. The phone slipped from Brent's fingers. It hit the marble floor with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. The screen shattered. Brent fell to his knees. His legs simply gave out. He did not faint. He just collapsed under the weight of his own corruption. He knelt there in the center of the lobby, surrounded by the symbols of the power he had tried to challenge. Embezzlement, Nia whispered. She looked down at her husband with horror. You stole money. I borrowed it, Brent sobbed, putting his head in his hands. I was going to put it back. I just needed to pay for the ring. I needed to pay for the car. I needed you to think I was successful. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the snot and the dirt. Please, sir, he begged. Please do not press charges. I will pay it back. I will work for free. Just don't send me to jail. I cannot go to jail. I looked down at him. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just a cold satisfaction that the ledger was finally balancing out. You should have thought about that before you threatened my family, I said. You should have thought about that before you stole from clients who trusted you. I turned to the head of security. The police are looking for him, I said. He has no fixed address since he was evicted last night. It would be a civic duty to detain him until the authorities arrive. The guards moved in. They pulled Brent up from the floor. He was dead weight, sobbing uncontrollably. He was no longer the arrogant finance bro. He was a criminal caught in the light. Nia backed away from him. She looked at the man she had married, the man she had destroyed her relationship with me for. She saw a thief, a liar, a failure. And then she looked at me. She saw the man who had just spent $40 million to make a point. She saw the power she had thrown away. The lobby was silent again, save for the soft weeping of the man who had lost everything. The news on the screen continued to scroll, detailing the acquisition. My face was on the television now next to the stock ticker. I adjusted my tie. The meeting was not over. There was one more person who needed to understand the cost of betrayal. I turned my gaze to my daughter. Nia stood alone in the center of the vast marble lobby. Her husband was gone, dragged away by security to wait for the police. Her social standing was gone, obliterated by the revelation of my true status. But she still had one weapon left. She still had the ghost of her mother. She wiped the mascara from her cheeks with the back of her hand. She straightened her spine, trying to summon the ghost of the arrogance she had worn so comfortably just hours ago. She looked at me with eyes full of hatred. "You are a monster!" she screamed, her voice echoing off the glass walls of the atrium. "You enjoyed this. You enjoyed destroying Brent. You enjoyed humiliating me. You are a cruel, bitter old man who used his money to hurt his own family." She took a step toward me, her finger pointing accusingly. "Mom would hate you for this," she yelled. "She would despise you. She was the only one in this family with class. She was the only one with a heart. She tried to make us sophisticated. She tried to lift us out of the dirt you loved so much. That is why she left me that trust fund. Because she knew you would never understand what it means to be someone. She knew you were just a brute with a wrench." I felt a muscle twitch in my jaw. For 20 years I had swallowed that poison. For 20 years I had let Nia worship a lie because I thought the truth would break her. I had let her believe her mother was a saint, and I was the disappointment. I had worn the grease-stained coveralls like a penitent's robe, paying for sins that were not mine. But the time for protection was over. The time for the truth had arrived, and it was going to be uglier than any lie she had ever told. "Dante," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Bring me the red file." Dante nodded. He reached into his leather briefcase. He did not pull out a tablet or a laptop. He pulled out a thick, weathered file folder. It was tied with a string. It looked old. It smelled of dust and regret. He handed it to me. I weighed it in my hand. It was heavy. It contained the wreckage of my marriage. I threw it onto the granite reception table. It landed with a heavy thud, sliding across the polished surface until it stopped inches from Nia's hand. "Open it," I commanded. Nia looked at the folder. She looked at me. "What is this?" she sneered. "More legal threats. Are you going to sue me too, Daddy?" "It is not a lawsuit," I said. "It is your mother's legacy. Read it." Nia hesitated, but her curiosity won out. She untied the string. She opened the folder. The first thing she saw was a stack of photos. They were grainy, taken by a private investigator 20 years ago. She picked one up. It showed a woman sitting at a blackjack table, her eyes manic, a stack of chips in front of her. She was wearing a dress that was too tight, holding a drink that was too full. "That is Mom," she whispered, confused. "She is just playing cards." "Keep looking," I said. She flipped through the papers. There were photocopies of checks, dozens of them, all made out to cash, all signed by Beatrice Graves, all returned for insufficient funds. There were letters from collection agencies. There were threats written on napkins. "Your mother did not have a trust fund, Nia," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "Your mother had a gambling addiction. She had a shopping addiction. She had a hole in her soul that no amount of money could fill." Nia shook her head, dropping the papers. "No. That is a lie. She was elegant. She went to galas. She went to casinos," I corrected her. "She went to underground poker rooms. She lost the house, Nia, the first house we bought. She gambled the deed away in a night. I had to buy it back the next morning at double the price from a man who carried a gun." Nia was trembling. She picked up another document. It was a police report. "Beatrice Graves arrested for check fraud. I paid them off," I said. "I paid the casinos. I paid the department stores. I paid the loan sharks who came to our door at midnight threatening to break your legs." I took a step closer to her. I wanted her to see the truth in my eyes. "You asked why I worked so much," I said. "You asked why I was always tired. You asked why I wore those coveralls. I did not work 18 hours a day because I loved fixing engines, Nia. I did it because your mother was bleeding us dry. I built this empire not to get rich, but to stay alive. I built it to pay her debts so you would never have to know that your mother was a criminal." Nia was crying now, but they were tears of confusion and denial. "No," she sobbed. "She loved me. She planned for my future." I reached into the folder and pulled out the last document. It was a handwritten letter. The paper was yellowed with age. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Beatrice's sprawling, looping script. "Read this," I said. Nia took the letter. Her hands shook so hard the paper rattled. She began to read. "Lucian," the letter began. "I cannot do this anymore. I am leaving. Mark says he will take me to Miami. He has money, Lucian. Real money. Not this blue-collar pennies you scrape together. I am tired of pretending to be a mother. I am tired of the crying and the school runs. Nia is a burden I never wanted. She is heavy, Lucian. She holds me down. You keep her. I am going to be free. Do not look for me." Nia stopped reading. She stared at the words. "Nia is a burden I never wanted. She did not leave because she was sick. Nia," I said softly. "She left because she found a man she thought was richer than me. She packed her bags while you were at school. She wrote that note. She drove to the airport to meet him." Nia looked up, her eyes wide and shattered. "What happened?" "He did not show up," I said. "He found out she was in debt. He found out she was not the rich socialite she pretended to be. He left her standing at the terminal." I paused, letting the memory wash over me. "I went to get her," I said. "Not for me, but for you. Because I knew that if you found out your mother abandoned you, it would destroy you. I brought her home. I paid off her new debts. I hired nurses when her liver finally gave out from the drinking. And I let you believe she was a saint. I let you believe the money came from her because I wanted you to have one parent you could look up to." I pointed at the painting on the wall. "I became the villain so she could be the hero," I said. "I let you despise me. I let you call me a mechanic. I let you ban me from your wedding because I thought it would make you happy." Nia looked at the letter again. The ink was faded, but the cruelty was fresh. She looked at the police reports. She looked at the mountain of debt her mother had created. The pedestal she had built for Beatrice crumbled into dust. The image of the elegant, loving mother dissolved, leaving only a selfish addict who had tried to throw her away. And in that space, in that void where her idol used to be, she saw the man standing in front of her. She saw the man who had worked himself to the bone, the man who had silently paid the bills, the man who had absorbed her hatred for years to protect her from this exact moment. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew she hated me." "I knew she was sick," I said. "But yes, I knew. And I made sure you never felt it. I gave you the piano lessons. I gave you the private school. I gave you the trust fund. It was all me, Nia. Every single dollar, every single sacrifice. It was me." Nia dropped the letter. It fluttered to the marble floor, landing next to Brent's shattered phone. She looked at her hands. They were empty. Her husband was a criminal. Her mother was a fraud. Her father was a billionaire she had disowned. She let out a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a sob. It was the sound of a soul breaking. She collapsed onto the floor, not in a theatrical faint, but in a heap of ruin. She curled into a ball, her ruined wedding dress covering her like a shroud. She had built her entire identity on being better than me, on being Beatrice's daughter, on being a Harrington. Now she was nothing. She was just a girl who had been loved too much by a father she did not respect. I looked down at her. I felt a deep ache in my chest, but it was an old ache. It was the ache of a wound that had been open for 20 years. For the first time, I did not reach down to pick her up. I did not offer her a hand. I did not tell her it was going to be okay, because it was not okay. And picking her up now would only prevent her from learning how to stand on her own. I signaled to Dante. "We are done here," I said. I turned away from my weeping daughter and walked toward the private elevator. The doors opened. I stepped inside. As they closed, I saw Nia alone on the floor of the empire I had built for her, surrounded by the truth she could not handle. The mechanic was gone, the father was tired, and the CEO had a company to run. The silence in the lobby was heavy and suffocating, broken only by Nia's soft weeping on the floor. I stood over her, watching the realization sink into her bones. She was not the victim of a cruel father, she was the victim of her own blindness. But the lesson was not over yet. The elevator chime rang out again, sharp and clear, cutting through the tension like a knife. It was the private elevator, the one that required a security code or biometric clearance. I looked at Dante. He gave me a small nod. He had cleared them for entry. The doors slid open, revealing two figures who looked like they had been dragged through a hurricane and then attempted to fix themselves up in a gas station bathroom. It was Evelyn and George Harrington, Brent's parents, the aristocrats of the county, the people who had looked down their noses at me for years. They stepped into the atrium with a hesitant gait, looking around at the soaring glass walls, the marble floors, and the busy employees moving in the background. Their eyes landed on the massive portrait of me on the wall, and I saw their expressions shift. It was a transformation so grotesque it was almost fascinating. The fear and disdain vanished, replaced instantly by a hungry predatory warmth. They saw the wealth, they saw the power, and like heat-seeking missiles they locked onto the target. Lucian Evelyn cried out, her voice pitching up into a shrill register of delight. She hurried across the lobby, her heels clicking on the stone arms outstretched as if she were greeting a long-lost brother. "Lucian, darling, we have been so worried. We saw the news about the acquisition on the television in the lobby. We had no idea. Simply no idea." George followed close behind, buttoning his suit jacket, trying to look dignified despite the water stains on his trousers. "Mr. Graves," he boomed, using his best boardroom voice. "What a misunderstanding this has all been. A terrible, terrible lack of communication. If we had known you were the Graves of Graves Logistics, well, things would have been very different." They walked right past Nia. They walked past their daughter-in-law huddled on the floor in her ruined wedding dress, and did not even spare her a glance. Their eyes were fixed on me, fixed on the man they now realized was their winning lottery ticket. Evelyn reached me first, attempting to grab my hands. I stepped back, keeping my arms firmly at my sides. She did not let that deter her. She just smiled wider, her teeth white and predatory. "Oh, Lucian, please do not be like that," she cooed. "We are family after all. We are in-laws. We share a bond. We were just so stressed today with the heat and the confusion. You can understand that. Emotions run high at weddings. But now that we know the truth, now that we know we are equals, we can put all this unpleasantness behind us." "Equals," I repeated, my voice flat. "Yes," George chimed in, stepping up beside his wife. "We are all men of industry here, Lucian. We understand that sometimes you have to play your cards close to the vest. It was a brilliant maneuver, really pretending to be a laborer. Very eccentric, very billionaire of you. We applaud it." He let out a forced chuckle, trying to invite me into a joke that did not exist. "We came to take you all to dinner," Evelyn said, "to celebrate properly. There is a lovely private club uptown. We can discuss how to merge our families effectively. We can talk about Brent and Nia's future. I am sure with your resources and our connections we can build something magnificent." I looked at them. I looked at the desperation hiding behind their smiles. They were drowning. They had lost their house. They had no money. And they had just found out that the man they despised was a lifeline. They were willing to forget every insult, every slur, every moment of humiliation they had inflicted on me just 5 hours ago, if it meant they could get access to my checkbook. Nia looked up from the floor. She watched her in-laws fawning over me. She saw the naked greed in their eyes. For the first time, she saw them clearly. They did not care about her. They did not care about Brent. They only cared about survival. "You called him a grease monkey," Nia whispered, her voice hoarse. "You told me he was trash. You told me I was trash for being his daughter." Evelyn waved a hand dismissively without looking at Nia. "Oh, hush, darling. That was just banter. Your father understands. We were just testing you, trying to make sure you were tough enough for our world." She turned her beaming face back to me. "So, Lucian, what do you say? Shall we start over?" Clean slate. Brother-in-law to sister-in-law. I signaled Dante. He stepped forward, holding a remote control. "I do not think we can start over, Evelyn," I said, "because I have seen who you are, and unlike you, I do not forget." "What do you mean?" George asked, his smile faltering slightly. "I mean that I know why you are here," I said. "You are here because you are broke. You are here because you lost your estate, and you are here because you think I am foolish enough to bail you out." Evelyn bristled, drawing herself up. "That is preposterous. We are Harringtons. We have assets that are illiquid at the moment, but we are far from broke." "Is that so?" I asked. "Then perhaps you can explain this." I nodded to Dante. He pointed the remote at the massive screen on the wall, the same one that had announced the acquisition of Brent's company. The news feed cut out. The screen went black for a second. Then a new video feed appeared. It was high-definition security footage. The timestamp in the corner showed that it was from 3 hours ago, right before the wedding was canceled. The camera angle was from above, looking down at Table 1, the head table, the Harringtons table. On the screen, Evelyn and George were sitting side by side. The guests around them were distracted watching the first dance. Evelyn looked left then right, checking to see if anyone was watching. Her hand moved quickly like a striking snake. She grabbed a heavy silver fork from the place setting next to her. She slipped it into her open purse beneath the table. Then she grabbed the spoon, then the knife. The video cut to a different angle. This one showed George near the bar. The bartender had his back turned. George reached over the counter and grabbed 2 bottles of vintage wine. He did not pour a drink. He shoved the bottles inside his tuxedo jacket, holding them in place with his arm. The video cut back to the table. Evelyn was now sliding the silver salt and pepper shakers into her bag. She was methodical. She was efficient. She was stealing the table settings. I paused the video on a close-up of Evelyn's face as she shoved a linen napkin filled with silverware into her purse. Her expression was not one of eccentric mischief. It was the hard, desperate look of a thief. The lobby was silent. The employees who were still lingering, pretending to work, were staring at the screen. Nia was staring at the screen. Evelyn and George stood frozen. Their faces had drained of all color. They looked like statues made of ash. "You stole the silverware," I said, my voice echoing in the large space. "You stole the wine. You stole the salt shakers." Evelyn tried to speak, but her voice failed her. She made a choking sound. That is not what it looks like," George stammered. We were holding them, for safekeeping. We thought the staff might steal them." "You thought the staff might steal them," I repeated. "So you put them in your purse and your jacket." I took a step toward them. "You are not aristocrats," I said. "You are common thieves. You are so desperate for money that you stole from the venue of your son's wedding, a venue that I paid for. You stole from me." Evelyn found her voice. It was a screech. "Turn it off. Turn it off right now. This is a violation of our privacy. You cannot show this." "I can do whatever I want, Evelyn," I said. "I own the cameras. I own the footage. And I own the building we are standing in." I signaled Dante again. He pressed another button on the remote. The screen changed. It now showed an email interface. There was a video file attached to a new message. "You mentioned your connections earlier," I said. "You mentioned your clubs. Your charities. The places where you pretend to be nobility. I pointed at the screen. I have compiled a mailing list, I said. It includes the board of directors at the Oakwood Country Club. It includes the chairwoman of the City Charity League. It includes every creditor currently suing you for non-payment. And it includes the local police department. George's knees buckled. He grabbed the reception desk to hold himself up. No, he whispered. You wouldn't. I already did, I said. Dante hit send. On the screen, a progress bar appeared. Sending, sent. It is done, I said. By tomorrow morning, everyone in your social circle will see this video. They will see the great Harringtons stealing forks. They will see you for what you are. Evelyn let out a wail that sounded like an animal in a trap. You have ruined us. We are finished. We can never show our faces again. You ruined yourselves, I said. I just turned on the lights. I looked at them with disgust. They were small, petty people who had spent their lives making others feel small to inflate themselves. Now they were deflated. Get out of my building, I said. Before I have security check your pockets for my office supplies. Evelyn looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. But there was fear there, too. She grabbed George's arm. Come on, she hissed. We are leaving. They turned and ran. They did not walk with dignity. They scrambled toward the revolving doors, slipping on their smooth soles, stumbling in their haste to escape the gaze of the man they had wronged. They did not look back at Nia. They did not offer her a ride. They abandoned her just as they had abandoned their honor. I watched them go. I felt a cold satisfaction. It was not joy. It was the satisfaction of balancing an equation. I looked down at Nia. She was still on the floor, staring at the revolving doors where her in-laws had vanished. She looked at the screen where the video of their theft was still paused. They stole the forks, she whispered. She sounded like she was in shock. They called me trash and they stole the forks. Yes, I said. That is who they are, Nia. That is the family you chose. That is the lineage you wanted to join. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red and swollen. The defiance was gone. The arrogance was gone. There was only a terrified girl who had realized too late that she was alone in a dark forest. Daddy, she said, her voice breaking. I stood there, the CEO, the billionaire, the father who had been erased. I waited to see what she would do next. I waited to see if there was anything left of my daughter beneath the layers of artifice she had wrapped herself in. But I knew one thing for sure. The checkbook was closed. The rescue missions were over. Whatever happened next, she was going to have to face it on her feet, not on my shoulders. The lobby of the Graves Logistics Tower was silent save for the ragged breathing of my daughter. The Harringtons had fled like rats from a sinking ship, and Brent had been dragged away in handcuffs, leaving Nia alone in the center of the empire she had mocked. She looked around the vast atrium at the soaring glass walls and the security guards standing at attention, and finally, at me. The reality of her situation crashed down on her with the weight of the building itself. She was not the princess of the story. She was the villain who had been defeated, and now she was looking for a way to rewrite the ending. Nia did not stand up. She did not try to regain her composure or smooth her ruined dress. Instead, she let her knees hit the hard marble floor with a sickening thud. She crawled toward me. It was a display of abject humiliation that would have broken my heart yesterday, but today it only made me study her with a clinical detachment. She reached out and wrapped her arms around my legs, burying her face against the fabric of my suit trousers. Her tears soaked into the expensive wool. "Daddy, please," she sobbed, her voice muffled and hysterical. "I am so sorry. I was blind. I was stupid. Please forgive me. Do not leave me like this." I stood rigid. I did not reach down to stroke her hair. I did not offer a comforting hand. I let her cling to me like a drowning swimmer trying to pull down a lifeguard. "I will leave him," Nia cried, looking up at me with eyes that were red and swollen. "I will divorce Brent. I will annul the marriage. He is a criminal daddy. You were right about him. You were right about everything. I do not want him. I want to come home." She tightened her grip on my legs as if she could physically anchor herself to my life again. "I will be better," she promised, the words tumbling out of her mouth in a desperate torrent. "I will work at the company. I will learn the business. I can help you, Daddy. We can be a team, just like when I was little. Remember when I used to hand you wrenches in the garage? Remember how we used to get ice cream? I miss that. I miss us." She was weaponizing nostalgia. She was digging through the archives of our history looking for a memory that would trigger my protective instinct. She was trying to remind me of the little girl with pigtails, so I would forget the woman who had put my face on a security poster. "Please take me back," she wailed. "I have nowhere to go. My apartment is locked. My clothes are in the trash. I have no money. You cannot let your daughter sleep on the street. You are a good man, Daddy. You have always been a good man." She looked up at me with an expression of practiced innocence. It was the same look she used to give me when she wanted a new car or a trip to Europe. It was the look that said, "I am helpless and you are strong, so it is your duty to fix me." "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I never stopped loving you. I was just confused. The Harringtons manipulated me. Brent manipulated me. But now I see the truth. Please let me come home." I looked down at the top of her head. I looked at the trembling of her shoulders, and I felt absolutely nothing. The well of sympathy I had drawn from for 28 years was dry. The reservoir of forgiveness was empty. I did not see a repentant child. I saw a gambler who had bet everything on the wrong horse and was now trying to cancel the bet after the race was over. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was not sorry for the pain she had caused. She was sorry that the consequences had finally arrived. She was sorry that the Harringtons were broke. She was sorry that Brent was going to prison. She was sorry that she was cold and hungry and poor. I reached down and firmly removed her hands from my legs. It required force. She did not want to let go. I peeled her fingers away one by one, breaking the contact. I stepped back, creating a physical distance between us that mirrored the emotional chasm she had dug. "Nia," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet lobby. "Stop." She froze her hands, hovering in the air where my legs had been. She looked up at me, blinking through her tears. "Daddy," she whimpered. "Do not call me that," I said. My voice was not angry. It was cold. It was the voice of a judge delivering a verdict. "You lost the right to call me that when you decided I was not good enough to walk you down the aisle. You lost the right to call me that when you told your friends I was dead to you." I looked her in the eye. I wanted her to hear this. I wanted her to understand. "You are asking for forgiveness," I said, "but you are not asking because you feel remorse. You are asking because you are uncomfortable. You are asking because your credit cards are declined and your apartment is locked. You are asking because you realize that the mechanic you despised is actually the billionaire you need." Nia shook her head violently, sending droplets of dirty water flying. "No, that is not true. I love you." "You love my wallet," I corrected her. "You love the safety I provide. You love the fact that no matter how badly you screw up, I have always been there to write a check. You love the lifestyle I gave you, but you do not love me." I walked around her, circling her as she knelt on the floor. "If I were still just a mechanic," I said, "if I were really the man you thought I was, this morning broke and living in a cabin, would you be on your knees right now? If I had nothing to offer you but a hug and a sandwich, would you be begging to come home? Or would you be at the Harringtons laughing about how you finally got rid of the dead weight?" Nia opened her mouth to speak, but she closed it again. She could not lie. Not with my eyes boring into her. We both knew the answer. If I were poor, she would not be here. She would be chasing the next mark. "You blamed Brent," I continued. "You blamed the Harringtons. You said they manipulated you. And maybe they did. But you let them. You let them because they told you what you wanted to hear. They told you that you were special. They told you that you were better than your origins. You were willing to erase me to fit into their world." I stopped in front of her. "You offered to leave your husband," I said. "You offered to abandon the man you married 5 hours ago. You promised to annul your vows just to get back into my good graces. That tells me everything I need to know about your character, Nia. You have no loyalty. You have no spine. You go where the money is." Nia flinched as if I had slapped her. "That is cruel," she whispered. "It is the truth," I said. "And the truth is the only thing I have left to give you. I spent your entire life trying to shield you from the world. I protected you from your mother's addiction. I protected you from poverty. I protected you from the consequences of your own laziness and entitlement." I looked up at the portrait on the wall. The image of the strong self-made man. "I thought I was being a good father," I said. "I thought I was giving you the childhood I never had. But I was wrong. I was not raising a daughter. I was raising a parasite." Nia gasped. "Daddy, please don't say that." "I fed the monster. I said, looking back down at her. Every time I bailed you out, every time I bought you a new car when you wrecked the old one, every time I silenced your critics with my money, I was feeding the monster. I taught you that you could do no wrong. I taught you that money solves everything. I taught you that people are disposable. I took a deep breath. The air in the lobby felt cleaner now, lighter. I am done feeding the monster, Nia, I said. The restaurant is closed. Nia stared at me. The hope in her eyes died. She realized that this was not a negotiation. This was not a temper tantrum that she could wait out. This was final. She saw the man standing before her not as her father, but as a stranger she had created. "But what will I do?" she whispered, her voice trembling with genuine terror. "I have nothing. I cannot do anything. I don't know how to survive." "I know," I said. "And that is my fault. I failed to teach you the most important lesson of all. I failed to teach you how to stand on your own 2 feet. I signaled to the security guards who were waiting discreetly by the entrance. They stepped forward. "I am going to fix my mistake," I said, "but not by writing a check, not by opening a door." I stepped back, leaving her alone in the circle of empty floor. "I am going to let you fall," I said. "I am going to let you hit the bottom, because the only way you will ever learn to climb is if you are looking up from the dirt." "Get up, Nia," I ordered. She did not move. "Get up," I said, my voice cracking like a whip. "Show some dignity. Stand up." Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself up from the floor. Her legs were shaking. Her dress was ruined. She stood there swaying slightly, a broken doll in a marble box. "Goodbye, Nia," I said. I did not wait for a response. I turned and walked away. I heard the security guards step in. I heard them politely but firmly tell her it was time to leave. I heard the clicking of her heels as she was escorted toward the revolving doors, toward the street, toward the real world she had tried so hard to avoid. I did not look back. I could not look back. If I looked back, I might see my little girl. And I needed to remember that the little girl was gone. Only the woman remained, and the woman had to learn to save herself. The security guards had successfully escorted Nia out of the atrium toward the revolving doors. I had walked toward the elevator, my back turned, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. The chapter was closed, or so I thought. Suddenly a commotion erupted near the entrance. The smooth, efficient rhythm of the lobby was shattered by a scream. It was not a scream of protest or anger. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. I spun around. Brent had returned. He had not been taken to the police station yet. In the confusion of the lobby, with employees gawking and the Harringtons fleeing, he had slipped away from the initial detainment, or perhaps he had been lurking just outside waiting for his moment. He had re-entered the building through a side door propped open for a delivery. He was not alone. He had Nia. He had one arm wrapped tightly around her neck, dragging her backward into the center of the room. His other hand was shaking violently, but it held something that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. A gun. It was a small, cheap pistol, the kind you buy in a back alley when you are desperate and stupid. But it was real enough. "Stop!" Brent screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "Nobody move! Stay back!" The security guards froze their hands, hovering near their holsters, but they dared not draw. The lobby was crowded. The risk of collateral damage was too high. Employees dove behind desks and planters. Sarah, the receptionist, slid under her granite counter. Nia was clawing at Brent's arm, her eyes wide with shock. "Brent, what are you doing?" she gasped. "Let me go. You are hurting me." "Shut up!" Brent roared, tightening his grip until Nia choked. He looked wild. His hair was in his eyes, his shirt was torn, and he was sweating profusely. He looked like a cornered animal that had decided to bite. I walked slowly back toward the center of the lobby. I did not run. I did not shout. I moved with the steady, calculated pace of a man who had walked through fire before. "Let her go." "Brent," I said, my voice calm and low. Brent swung the gun toward me, then back to Nia's head. "Do not come any closer, old man. I swear to God I will do it. I have nothing left to lose. You took everything from me, my job, my money, my reputation. You took it all. You took it from yourself," I said, stopping 10 feet away. "I just balanced the books." "I want $5 million, Brent shouted. "Transfer it now. An offshore account, non-traceable. I want a helicopter on the roof in 10 minutes, or I will paint this fancy floor with your daughter's blood." Nia stopped struggling. She went limp in his arms, her eyes locking onto mine. She saw the truth then. She saw that the man she had married, the man she had chosen over me, was not just a fraud. He was a monster. He did not love her. He was using her as a human shield. "Daddy, help me," she whispered. I looked at Brent. I looked past the gun, past the sweat, past the fear. I looked into his eyes. I saw a coward, a weak man trying to play a strong man's game. "You are making a mistake, son," I said. "You are turning a financial crime into a life sentence. Put the gun down." "We can talk." "Talk." Brent laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Talk! You do not talk. You destroy. You think you are God in this tower? Well, I have the power now. I have the girl." He pressed the barrel of the gun against Naya's temple. She whimpered a sound of pure despair. 5 million, Brent repeated. "Or she dies. And it will be your fault. You pushed me to this." I did not flinch. I did not beg. I had spent 2 years in a reconnaissance unit in the desert before I ever turned a wrench. I knew how to read a threat. I knew how to gauge the distance, the angle, the intent. Brent was shaking. His finger was on the trigger, but his grip was loose. He was terrified of the recoil. He was not a shooter. He was a poser. I caught Dante's eye. He was standing to my right, 5 feet behind Brent, partially obscured by a decorative pillar. Dante was former Special Forces. He moved like smoke. He was waiting for my signal. I looked back at Brent, holding his gaze. "I do not have $5 million in cash," I said, lying smoothly. "It takes time to liquidate assets." "Liar!" Brent screamed. "You bought a company this morning. You have the money. Make the call." I took a half step forward, just a shift in weight. Brent flinched. He swung the gun toward me for a split second, distracted by my movement. "That was the mistake." "Now," I said. It was not a shout. It was a command. Dante moved. He did not run. He exploded. He covered the distance in a single fluid motion. His hand chopped down on Brent's wrist with the force of a hydraulic press. There was a sickening crack of bone. Brent screamed, dropping the gun. It skittered across the marble floor, spinning away harmlessly. Dante did not stop. He swept Brent's legs out from under him, slamming him face first onto the floor. He twisted Brent's good arm behind his back, applying pressure until Brent cried out in agony. "Stay down," Dante growled, his knee pressing into Brent's spine. Nia stumbled forward, free from the grip. She fell to her knees, gasping for air, clutching her throat where Brent's arm had been. She looked at Brent, pinned to the floor like a broken insect. She looked at the gun lying yards away. "He was going to kill me," she whispered. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a new kind of horror. "He was actually going to kill me." I walked over to her. I stood over her not as a savior, but as a witness. "Yes," I said. "He was. Because he never loved you, Naya. He loved what you could give him, and when you had nothing left to give you, became a bargaining chip." I looked at the security guards who were now rushing in to secure the scene. "Get him out of here," I said, pointing at Brent. "And make sure the police get the security footage. Attempted murder, kidnapping, extortion. Make sure the charges stick." Brent was sobbing into the floor as they dragged him away. His cries echoed in the cavernous lobby, a pathetic soundtrack to his final failure. I turned back to Nia. She was still on her knees, shaking uncontrollably. She reached out for my hand. "Daddy," she said. "Thank you. You saved me." I looked at her hand. It was dirty. Her nails were broken. She was a mess. I did not take her hand. "I saved your life," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. "I did not save you. There is a difference." I signaled to Sarah, the receptionist. "Call the police," I said, "and call a cab." "For who?" Sarah asked. "For my daughter," I said. "She has somewhere she needs to be. And it is not here." The sirens arrived first, wailing in the distance like banshees coming to collect the dead. Then came the lights, blue and red, flashing against the glass walls of the Graves Logistics Tower, turning the pristine marble lobby into a strobe-lit nightmare. The heavy revolving doors were pushed open and a squad of uniformed officers stormed in, their hands on their holsters, their eyes scanning for threats. Dante stepped forward, calmly raising his hands to show he was unarmed, and identified himself as the head of security. He pointed to the figure pinned to the floor. Brent was still face down, his cheek pressed against the cold stone, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle behind his back. He was sobbing, a wet, pathetic sound that grated on my nerves. When the officers hauled him up, he went limp, his legs dragging like a dead weight. He looked at the police not with fear, but with a strange sort of relief, as if being arrested was better than spending another minute in the room with me. The lead officer, a sergeant with a face carved from granite, read the charges as he slapped the handcuffs on Brent's wrists. The metal clicked shut with a sound of finality. Attempted murder, aggravated assault, kidnapping, possession of an unregistered firearm, and thanks to the digital packet Dante had already forwarded to the district attorney, federal wire fraud and embezzlement. Brent tried to speak, but his voice was a broken croak. "It was not my fault," he stammered, looking wildly around the room. "I was pushed. I was desperate. He did this to me. He pointed his chin at me. He ruined my life." The sergeant did not even look at me. He shoved Brent forward. "Tell it to the judge, son," he said. "You are going away for a long time." I watched them drag my son-in-law toward the exit. He was no longer the arrogant finance executive who had sneered at my work boots. He was just another criminal in a tuxedo that did not belong to him. As he passed through the doors, he looked back one last time. His eyes met mine, and for a second I saw the realization hit him. He had held a gun to my daughter's head in my building. There would be no plea deal. There would be no parole. I would spend every penny of my fortune ensuring that he rotted in a cell until he was old and gray. The doors spun shut and he was gone. The lobby quieted down. The police began taking statements from the witnesses. Sarah, the receptionist, was shaking as she gave her account to a female officer. The security team was reviewing the footage. I turned my attention to the only person left. Nia. She was standing near the reception desk, hugging herself, shivering as if she were freezing to death. Her wedding dress was torn at the shoulder where Brent had grabbed her. Her neck was already beginning to bruise, a dark purple fingerprint forming on her pale skin. She looked like a survivor of a shipwreck washed up on a jagged shore. She watched the police cars drive away, their lights fading into the rainy night. Then she turned slowly to look at me. I saw the shift in her eyes. I saw the terror recede and a new emotion take its place. Hope. Not the genuine hope of a person who wants to change, but the desperate, calculating hope of a person who thinks the worst is over. She took a step toward me. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to smear the makeup back into some semblance of dignity. "He is gone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He is gone, Daddy. It is over." She looked at me, expecting me to rush forward. She expected the hug. She expected the coat draped over her shoulders. She expected the ride in the limousine back to a warm house with soft beds and hot soup. She thought that because she had been a victim for 10 minutes, it erased 28 years of being a predator. "I am so glad you were here," she said, gaining a little more confidence. "I don't know what I would have done. I was so scared. I thought he was going to kill me." She reached out a hand. "Can we go now? I just want to go home. I want to take a bath. I want to forget this ever happened." I looked at her outstretched hand. It was the hand that had signed the contract banning me from her wedding. It was the hand that had held the champagne glass while she mocked my profession. "There is no home, Naya," I said. My voice was not angry. It was hollow. She froze. "What do you mean?" "Brent is gone. It is just us now. You can take me back to your house. Or I can stay in a hotel. You own this building, Daddy. You must have a place for me." She still did not get it. She thought the trauma bond would reset the clock. She thought that because I had saved her life, I was now obligated to fund it. I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. Nia's eyes followed the movement. She licked her lips. She thought I was reaching for a checkbook. She thought I was reaching for a black card. She thought I was reaching for the keys to a new penthouse. I pulled out a plain white envelope. It was sealed. It was not thick. I held it out to her. "Here," I said. "This is for you." Nia took it. Her fingers brushed against mine, and I felt her skin clammy and cold. She tore it open eagerly, her eyes scanning the contents. She pulled out a single slip of paper. It was not a check. It was not a deed. It was a Greyhound bus ticket. One way. She stared at it, confusing, clouding her face. She looked at the destination printed in bold black ink. "Oildale, California." "Oildale," she whispered. "Where is Oildale?" "It is a town in the middle of nowhere," I said. "It is hot, it is dusty, and it is far away from here." She looked deeper into the envelope. There was a folded piece of paper behind the ticket. She pulled it out. It was a printout from a job listing website. It was for a diner called the Rusty Spoon. The position circled in red marker was dishwasher. Night shift. Minimum wage. "What is this?" she asked, her voice rising in panic. "Is this a joke?" "It is your life," I said. I took a step closer to her. I wanted to make sure she heard every word. You have no credit cards, I said. I canceled them all. You have no phone. It is evidence in a police investigation now. You have no apartment. You have no husband. You have nothing. Nia shook her head, backing away. No, you can't do this. You have millions. You can't send me to be a dishwasher. I am your daughter. You are a woman who needs to learn what a dollar costs, I said. You have spent your entire life spending money you did not earn. You looked down on people who worked with their hands. You called them grease monkeys. You called them trash. I pointed to the paper in her hand. Now you are going to be one of them. Nia crumpled the paper. I won't go. I will stay here. I will sleep in the lobby if I have to. You can't, I said. You are trespassing. If you are not out of this building in 10 minutes, I will have security remove you just like they removed your husband. Nia looked at the security guards. They were watching her with stone faces. They worked for me. They would do exactly what I said. Daddy, please, she sobbed, falling to her knees again. I can't do it. I don't know how to wash dishes. I don't know how to live like that. I will die out there. You won't die, I said. You will work. You will. You will sweat. Your back will ache. Your hands will chap. You will come home smelling of grease and old food. I leaned down until my face was level with hers. And every night when you lie in your cheap motel bed, you will remember that the man you despise did that for 40 years so you could wear silk. Nia stared at me, her eyes wide with a horror that was deeper than when Brent held the gun. This was the horror of reality, the horror of labor. 2 years, I said, straightening up. You stay there for 2 years. You work every shift. You pay your own rent. You buy your own food. You do not use the name Graves. You use your mother's maiden name. You are Nia Miller. If you can do that, I said, if you can survive for 2 years without asking me for a dime, if you can show me pay stubs and a lease in your name, then you can come back. Then we can talk about family. And if I don't, she whispered, then do not come back, I said, because the Nia standing here right now is not welcome in my life. I turned to Dante. Give her the cash, I said. Dante stepped forward and handed her $200. This is for food on the bus, I said. Do not spend it on magazines. Nia looked at the money in her hand. It was a pittance compared to what she was used to, but right now it was the only capital she had in the world. The bus leaves in an hour, I said, checking my watch. The station is 6 blocks away. You can walk. Walk, she gasped. It is raining. I am in a wedding dress. Then you better start moving, I said, or you will miss it. I turned my back on her. I did not want to see her leave. I did not want to see my daughter walking out into the rain broken and alone. But I knew I had to. I had to break the bone to reset it. I heard her stand up. I heard her sniffle. I heard the soft shuffle of her ruined heels on the marble. I hate you, she whispered. It was a soft, venomous sound. I know, I said to the empty air in front of me. I heard the revolving doors spin. A gust of damp wind blew into the lobby, and then the doors sealed shut again. She was gone. I stood there for a long time. The lobby was quiet. The employees had gone back to their stations, pretending not to have witnessed the dismantling of a family. I felt old. I felt tired. My suit felt heavy. Dante stepped up beside me. Did I do the right thing, Dante? I asked, my voice low. Dante looked at the door where Nia had exited. You gave her a chance, sir, he said. A real chance. That is more than she gave you. I nodded. It was true. I had given her a ticket to reality. Whether she took the ride or got off at the first stop was up to her. I unbuttoned my jacket. Let's go home, Dante, I said. I have an empire to run. I walked back to the elevator, leaving the memory of my daughter on the lobby floor. The mechanic in me knew that sometimes you have to strip an engine down to the blocks to make it run again. I just hoped she had enough fuel to restart. The Atlantic Ocean stretched out before me, a vast expanse of blue that mirrored the sky. I sat in the fighting chair on the aft deck of the Beatrice, my 60-foot yacht, the salt spray misting my face. It had been 1 year since the day I dismantled my family in the lobby of my own tower. 1 year of silence. 1 year of peace. I had stepped down as CEO, handing the daily operations over to a board of directors I trusted, keeping only the chairman title and the veto power. I had traded the suit for linen shirts and the corner office for the open sea. My fishing line bobbed in the water. I was not really fishing. I was just existing. I was learning how to breathe without the weight of a secret life pressing down on my chest. Dante walked onto the deck. He was wearing a polo shirt and shorts, looking less like a bodyguard and more like a friend. He held a tablet in one hand and 2 cold beers in the other. "Afternoon, sir," he said, handing me a bottle. The condensation felt good against my calloused palm. "Afternoon, Dante," I replied. "Any bites?" "Not on the line," Dante said, sitting in the chair next to me. "But I have the quarterly update you asked for. The personal one." I took a sip of beer. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes on the horizon. "Tell me." "The Harrington file first," Dante said, scrolling on his tablet. "It is grim, sir. Very grim." "Give me the highlights," I said. "Brent Harrington was sentenced last month." Dante read, his voice neutral. 15 years in federal prison. No parole for at least 10. He is currently in a medium security facility upstate. "How is he adjusting?" I asked. "Poorly," Dante replied. "According to our contact inside, he attempted to bribe a guard with non-existent stock options. It did not go well. He also got into an altercation in the laundry room. Broken nose, 2 fractured ribs. He is currently in protective custody. He spends his days writing letters to the appeals court claiming he was framed by a corporate conspiracy." I nodded. He was still blaming the world. He had not learned a thing. He was rotting in a cell of his own making, still convinced he was the smartest man in the room. "And the parents?" I asked. "Evelyn and George Harrington were evicted from their rental apartment 6 months ago," Dante continued. "They are currently residing in a subsidized housing complex on the east side. The neighbors report multiple noise complaints. Apparently, Evelyn screams at the mailman when he does not address her as Mrs. Harrington." Dante swiped on the screen. "George was arrested twice for petty theft, shoplifting gourmet cheese from a deli. They are surviving on state assistance, and what little they can make selling the last of their jewelry at pawn shops. They are pariahs, sir. The society they worshipped has completely erased them." I felt a twinge of pity, but it was fleeting. They had chosen their path. They had chosen greed over honor. They were living the consequences. "And the third file?" I asked, my voice softening slightly. Dante hesitated. He did not read from the screen this time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a physical photograph. It was printed on glossy paper. He handed it to me face down. "The private investigator sent this yesterday," Dante said. "Taken in Oildale." I took the photo. My hand trembled just a little. I turned it over. The image was high resolution, taken with a telephoto lens, but clearly from a distance. It showed the back alley of a diner, the rusty spoon. It looked exactly as I had imagined it. Grease stains on the wall, overflowing dumpsters, a screen door hanging off its hinges. Sitting on an overturned milk crate was a woman. She was wearing a stained pink waitress uniform and an apron that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, no longer styled or highlighted. Her face was free of makeup, revealing the freckles I used to count when she was a child. Her hands were red and chapped rough from hot water and harsh soap. It was Nia. But it was not the Nia I had left in the lobby. It was not the Nia who had screamed and begged. In the photo, she was holding half a sandwich. A stray cat, a scrawny orange thing with a torn ear, was sitting at her feet, looking up at her expectantly. Nia was not shooing it away. She was not looking at it with disgust. She was tearing off a piece of the sandwich and offering it to the animal. There was a look in her eyes that I had not seen in 20 years. It was not arrogance. It was not entitlement. It was exhaustion. Yes, but underneath the exhaustion there was something else. Patience, humility, maybe even kindness. "She is working double shifts," Dante said quietly. "She rents a room above a garage 3 blocks away. She walks to work. She pays her rent on time. She has not used the name Graves once. She goes by Nia Miller." I stared at the photo. I stared at the way she looked at the cat. She was feeding something weaker than herself. She was sharing what little she had. "She has not called," Dante added. "She has not tried to contact the company. She has not asked for a dime." I ran my thumb over the image of her face. 2 years, I had told her. 2 years to break the mold and forge something new. It had been 1 year. She was halfway there. "She is tired," I murmured. "She is surviving," Dante corrected. "She is learning." I looked at the cat again. It reminded me of the stray dogs I used to feed when I was starting out sleeping in the cab of my truck. I knew that look. It was the look of someone who understands hunger. I folded the photo carefully. I placed it in the breast pocket of my linen shirt right over my heart. I patted it once. "Should we intervene?" Dante asked. "It has been a year, sir. We could send her something anonymously. A better apartment, a car, just to make it easier." I looked out at the ocean. The sun was dipping lower, painting the water in shades of gold and fire. "No," I said. "Not yet." But Sir Dante started. "If I help her now," I said, cutting him off gently, "I rob her of the victory. If I make it easy, she will never know that she is strong enough to do it hard. She needs to know that she saved herself, Dante. She needs to know that she did not need me to survive." I picked up my fishing rod. I reeled in the line, checking the bait. "She is becoming the woman I should have raised," I said. "The woman who knows the value of $1 and the value of a kindness." I cast the line back out into the water. It hit the surface with a small splash. "One more year," I said. "Let her finish the shift. Let her walk in the rain a few more times." I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes and listening to the sound of the waves against the hull. And then I whispered to the wind, carrying my words toward the shore, toward the dusty town where my daughter was scrubbing plates. "Keep going, Nia. I am watching, and I am proud." I smiled. The line went taut. I had a bite, but I was in no rush to reel it in. I had all the time in the world. And for the first time in a long time, I had hope. The future was unwritten, but at least now the pen was in the right hands. The greatest inheritance a parent can leave a child is not a trust fund, but the resilience to survive without one. For years I mistook enabling for loving, thinking that shielding Nia from the harshness of the world was my duty. I was wrong. By stripping away the unearned luxury, I gave her the dignity of earning her own way. True wealth is not found in a bank account or a title. It is found in the strength of one's character and the kindness we extend when we have nothing to gain. Sometimes you have to let your children fall so they can finally learn how to stand. If you believe that respect must be earned and that tough love is sometimes the only way to save a soul, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice.